Chapter 1. It's not easy. The Du family is finally recruiting guards. The Du family is currently recruiting 20 guards. The requirement is to be at least 16 years old and have a strong body. The Du family's guards have a monthly wage of 10 cultivation coins and the guard captain has 50 cultivation coins. The treatment is much better than the other families. The Du family is recruiting guards. This is a good opportunity. If you can enter the Du family as a guard, you might even be able to learn the Du family's martial skills. At that time, you will truly stand out. The Du family is rarely recruiting guards. This is a good opportunity. On the bustling streets of the Stone City, a few burly men dressed in martial arts clothes with an extraordinary aura pasted a large red notice on the city wall. Suddenly, a large group of figures gathered in front of the city wall and whispered to each other as they discussed spiritedly. Among the few burly men with extraordinary auras, the leading burly man was riding a dark red horse with 2 horns on its head. Its body was strong and sturdy, and its aura was oppressive. He looked at the gathering crowd and said, "Tomorrow morning, my Du family is recruiting guards. As long as you can withstand 3 moves from my Du family's main branch's younger generation, you can become a guard. If you can defeat or tie with any of my Du family's main branch's younger generation, you can become a guard captain. There are 20 spots, first come, first served." The burly man on the horse's sharp gaze revealed a kind of pride and arrogance. The Du family's position in the entire Stone City was not ordinary. As a member of the Du family, he naturally had a sense of pride that surpassed ordinary people. As the burly man's voice faded, the several people behind him each jumped onto their horses and stood side by side behind the leading burly man. Their movements were neat as they swaggered off. The one riding the Fergana dragon horse in front is the Du family's vice commander, Du Qi. Rumor has it that he has already reached the Xiantian realm. If only I could reach the Xiantian realm. Then, I would have no problem walking sideways in Stone City. Let's see who dares to look down on me in the future. You should go pray to the gods and Buddha. Pray that you can enter the Du family as a guard tomorrow. Although the Du family's younger generation is not old, each and every one of them is extremely valiant. I'm afraid that not many people can withstand 3 moves from them. Xiantian realm, dream on. That level is not something that anyone can reach. Tomorrow I will definitely join the Du clan as a guard. Among the crowd of onlookers, a burly man with a face full of stubble and slightly dark skin smiled mysteriously at his companions. He lowered his voice and said, "Let me tell you guys a secret. As long as you can become a guard captain, you will be able to cultivate some of the Du family's cultivation methods and martial skills. At that time, it is not impossible to completely become a member of the Du family." "Blackie, you're not lying to us, are you? The captain of the guards can practice the Du family's cultivation methods and martial skills?" The man's companions were shocked, and their eyes were filled with envy. The man called Hazy patted his chest and promised, "One of my distant relatives is a member of the Du clan." "Why would I lie to you? You actually have a relative from the Du family? Then you'll definitely be admitted tomorrow." When the surrounding people heard this, they immediately revealed looks of envy towards Hazy. When the news of the Du family recruiting guards spread out, it immediately attracted the attention of countless people. As a new large family in the Stone City, their strength was strong these past few years. They were ranked among the 5 great families of the Stone City, and they would continue to have a strong momentum. Their every move naturally attracted the attention of the entire city. Dusk. Thick clouds and mist occupied the sky above the Stone City. The sun near the horizon was like a ball of fire that was about to be extinguished. Rays of crimson light shot out from the gaps between the clouds and mist, and then descended on the mountains. The Stone City was close to the Savage Beast mountain range. It was located at the border of the empire, and demonic beasts would frequently appear. There were all kinds of people mixed in, and it also caused the people in the Stone City to worship martial arts. They were also exceptionally valiant. Among them, the 5 great families were martial cultivation families. Dang dang! A few horses raised their hooves, causing dust to fly in the air. Their imposing manner was extraordinary. The one riding the Fergana horse dragon was the official vice commander of the Du family's guards, Du Qi. Behind Du Qi, a big man slightly raised his head to look at the sky. Then, he smiled at the people on the horse beside him and said, 13th day, let's bet if that fool is still here. 5 profound coins, how about it 1? That fool seems to be getting more and more foolish recently. I'm afraid he's still here. I bet he's still here. It's already the 13th day. That fool shouldn't be here anymore. The previous record was only 10 days. I bet he's not here anymore. 5 pieces of cultivation coins was half a month's salary for an ordinary guard, but these burly men were very interested. It seemed like this wasn't the first time they had made such a bet, so they all took out 5 pieces of cultivation coins and handed it over to the first burly man. You guys, be careful. Although that person isn't favored in the family and his actions are rather strange, don't blame me for not warning you. After all, that person is the young master of the Du family. He's your master. If one day you guys fall because of this, even I won't be able to protect you. On the Fergana horse dragon, Du Qi glared at the few big men with a stern expression. The big man who took the lead to make a fuss was somewhat afraid under Du Qi's stern gaze. His gaze flickered, then he smiled embarrassedly and said, Vice Commander, the entire Du family, and even the entire Shur city, are calling him a fool behind his back. What's more, he's both a cripple and a fool. It shouldn't be a problem for us to call him that in private, right? Although that's the case, a master is still a master. No matter how crippled or foolish that person is, the blood flowing in his body is still the blood of the Du family. You guys have to be clear about your position. Otherwise, you're destined to suffer a great loss in the future. Du Qi fiercely glared at the few big men. Understood, Vice Commander. The few big men suddenly trembled and nodded their heads. They naturally understood the logic of the Vice Commander's words. Seeing this, Du Qi's expression eased a little. Then, he turned his head and glanced at the first big man who made a fuss and said, 5 profound coins, right? Add me 5 profound coins as well. I bet that person is still standing there. Vice Commander has also placed a bet. Seeing this, the tense atmosphere from before dissipated by quite a bit. They urged their horses to gallop faster, all wanting to know whether the person from the Du family was still there or not. The Du family, one of the 5 great families of Shur City, had a grand and imposing building. And in front of the Du family's main gate was a barren mountain, which was especially eye-catching in front of the majestic Du family. That barren mountain was strange. All year round, not a single blade of grass grew. Birds did not land, snakes, insects, rats and ants did not come near. It was like a dead land, to the extent that the Du family members thought that this place was ominous and avoided it like the plague. It was said that the Du family's main gate was originally near the mountain, but because of the ominous place, the Du family members forcibly moved the Du family's main gate to the front. From then on, the Du family, which was originally a third-rate family, began to rise in Shur City. This made people increasingly believe that the barren mountain was an ominous place, and less people dared to approach it. The barren mountain was like a dead land, not a single blade of grass grew. It was completely withered, and the ground was filled with sand and stones. On top of the barren mountain, half of a stone tablet stood tall. The remaining half of the stone tablet should be buried in the barren mountain. Half of the stone tablet was exposed on top of the barren mountain. It was extremely large, at least 3 feet tall, and mottled all over. No one knew how long it had been there. At the very least, no one in the Du family knew how long this stone tablet had been there. It was said that the stone tablet had been there since the ancestors. Perhaps because the stone tablet had been there for a long time, there were many intricate and small cracks on it. No one in the Du family was interested in the stone tablet. In addition, the stone tablet was on top of an ominous barren mountain, so no one paid any attention to it. It was said that the Du family had experts examine the stone tablet in the past, and it was completely an ordinary stone tablet. There was nothing special about it. The only special thing about the stone tablet was the storm 10 years ago. The famous young master of the Du family, Du Xiaofu, was in a daze in front of the stone tablet. A lightning bolt struck the stone tablet, but the stone tablet was fine. Du Xiaofu, who was in front of the stone tablet, was in a coma for 3 days and 3 nights because of the lightning bolt. Damn, that fool, that person is still there. It's already the 13th day. I lost another half a month's salary. The rest of the month will be difficult. When the time comes, lend me some living expenses to deal with this emergency. As the sun set in the west, in front of the Du family's main gate, several strong men stared blankly at the figure of a thin youth in front of the stone tablet. Then, their eyes were filled with joy and disappointment. Those who won were happy, but those who lost 5 cultivation coins were naturally unhappy. Who would have thought that this time, the person that the entire Du family called a fool, would break the record again? He stood in front of the stone tablet for 13 days without rest. Let's go, it's going to be dark soon. Tomorrow, there will be many young masters and young ladies going to the guard recruitment to try their hands. We cannot afford to make any mistakes. Du Qi retracted his gaze from the stone tablet and secretly sighed. Tomorrow's guard recruitment was, in fact, a small practice for the younger generation of the Du family. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. However, the person on the mountain, although he was also a young master of the Du family, tomorrow's practice had nothing to do with him. Perhaps, it would never have anything to do with him. They were both young masters and young ladies, but this was the difference. That fool is still standing there. It's been 13 days, right? He's getting more and more foolish. It is said that the family has found many doctors to treat that fool, but they were all ineffective. There is really no medicine that can cure him. Outside the Du residence, many servants and maids would occasionally glance at the barren mountain in front of them. Their gazes were filled with regret and regret. A young master who should have lived a life of luxury had unexpectedly turned into such a fool. The sky was getting darker and darker. Dusk gradually passed. The place where the sun set in the west still had a touch of red. As the last ray of afterglow faded, the world also became dark. In front of the stone tablet, a purple-robed youth sat cross-legged. He looked to be about 15 or 16 years old. On his slightly childish face, there was a bit more fortitude and determination compared to his peers. His slightly closed eyes and thick eyebrows were like swords. The youth was called Du Xiaofu. His appearance was not bad. If he was not from the Stone City, it was hard to imagine why he would be called a fool. In the deep blue night sky, the stars gradually appeared. A crescent moon was deep in the sky, like a curved blade blooming with a bright white blade light. In the dead of night, the entire Du family was in a deep sleep. No one would pay attention to the youth on the mountain. The ancient stone tablet stood tall, and under the cover of the moonlight, it looked especially strange. Boom! Suddenly, on the ancient stone tablet, the originally intricate cracks began to emit a faint light. The cracks continued to crack, and the entire barren mountain gently shook. No one saw all of this, or else they would be fiercely shocked. Crack, crack. Finally, the cracks on the ancient stone tablet that had stood for countless years became bigger and bigger. The light within the cracks became more and more dazzling, turning into a curtain of light that enveloped Du Xiaofu's body. Then, the entire stone tablet suddenly cracked, turning into a pile of gravel and powder that piled up on the barren mountain. Chi. As the light curtain disappeared, Du Xiaofu, who was in front of the stone tablet, suddenly opened his tightly shut eyes. 2 rays of light shot out from his eyes like lightning in the night. An ancient aura swept out from his thin body, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Huff! After spitting out a mouthful of turbid air, a faint smile appeared on Du Xiaofu's face. He sighed softly and said, "After 10 years, I have finally comprehended the first move. Brothers and sisters, bookmark, recommend, bookmark, recommend, and fill up the fan list. In addition, this month's rewards are all given to the author, so shall you also shamelessly appeals for rewards. I ask brothers and sisters to continue to support me, protect me, and love me. The new book has been conceived for a few months and has been revised many times. Xiao Yu will definitely work hard to write it well, update it many times, and create glory together with his brothers and sisters. Chapter 2. The silvery white dawn gradually turned red, and the morning glow shone over the entire stone city. In front of the Du family's gate, a large crowd had gathered early in the morning, and the whispers converged into a lively clamor. Today was the day that the Du family was recruiting guards, and those who wanted to participate had already lined up in front of the arena, all of them eager to give it a try. Even those who could not participate took the opportunity to watch the excitement and broaden their horizons. After all, such a lively event was rarely seen. In front of the Du family's gate, there were also many Du family members, and with the addition of many guards, no one dared to cause trouble in this lively scene. Isn't that the foolish young master of the Du family, fooling around on that barren mountain again? That stone tablet seems to have disappeared, that's strange. Among the crowd of onlookers outside the Du family, many people were looking at the barren mountain in front of the Du family's side gate. A young man in a purple robe was fiddling with something on that barren mountain. There was no need to guess, everyone in the stone city knew that the person was most likely the foolish young master of the Du family, and there was no one else. In these 10 years, the name and anecdote of the foolish young master Du Xiaofu had long been known by everyone, and it was a topic that had to be brought up in the stone city. Du Xiaofu, as the young master of the Du family, was definitely an existence that was favored by the heavens in the stone city. However, when Du Xiaofu's martial vein was tested at the age of 6, it was discovered that it was a useless vein, and he could not practice martial arts at all. In this prosperous world where martial arts were respected, the consequences of not being able to practice martial arts could be imagined. Originally, with the Du family's current prestige and power in the stone city, even if the young master of the Du family was unable to practice martial arts and had no status in the family, he could at least live a decent life. However, misfortune does not come alone. On the day of the test, the young master of the Du family was in a bad mood, and in the storm, he somehow ran to the stone tablet on the barren mountain. As a result, a bolt of lightning struck the stone tablet. The stone tablet was fine, but the poor young master of the Du family suffered an unexpected calamity, and only woke up after being struck by lightning for 3 days. Since then, the young master often ran to the stone tablet. At first, he stood there for a few hours, but later on, the time he stood there gradually became longer and longer. His eyes were dull, and he acted strange, and sometimes he even danced in front of the stone tablet. In the beginning, there were still people from the Du family who went to find someone to treat him, but it was to no avail, so after a long time, the Du family could only give up. In these 10 years, the name of this fool had spread from the Du clan to the entire stone city. Everyone knew that one of the young masters of the Du clan was a fool. If the younger generation of the Du family were all like him, then it would be much easier today. A burly man with a face full of stubble and slightly tanned skin looked at a figure on a distant barren mountain and whispered softly. The younger generation of the Du family has come out. It is said that this time, Du Yu and Du Shui are extremely strong, with a 5th-grade martial vein talent, and at the age of 14, the 6th stage of the Ho Tian realm. It is very likely that at the age of 17 or 18, they will step into the Xiantian realm. A 17 or 18-year-old Xiantian realm master, that is 1 in 10,000. Following the Du family's gate, more than 10 extraordinary young boys and girls stepped out onto the arena, each one standing in an orderly manner. Although they were young, their imposing manner was already extraordinary, causing the clamor in front of the arena to suddenly become silent for a moment. Everyone's eyes fell on the bodies of those young boys and girls. Du Qi walked onto the arena, facing the dense crowd of onlookers, and said, "The recruitment of guards begins now. Those who are not defeated in 3 moves can become my Du family's guards." Buzz! A low and deep bell sounded, and the recruitment of guards officially began. One by one, the big men who had already lined up jumped onto the arena, and one by one, the young boys and girls fought together. Clang! Pang! Pang! Suddenly, on the arena, the sound of metal colliding, palms and fists colliding could be heard from time to time. Coupled with the cheers from the surroundings, one could hear the lively clamor from afar. Everyone's eyes were attracted to the arena, and no one paid any attention to the figure of that young boy on the barren mountain. How could the stone tablet be broken? After the first style, there should be a second style. On the barren mountain, Du Xiaofu was rummaging through a pile of crushed stones and powder, raising a large amount of dust. The somewhat decent purple robe on his body was already covered in dust. His mouth was muttering softly, and his face was covered in dust, which made his originally extremely white and neat teeth seem even whiter and cleaner. Forget it, it seems that there really is no second style here. Du Xiaofu walked out from the crushed stones, and patted his robe with both hands, causing dust to fill the air. On his resolute and determined face, his eyes were penetrating and deep, faintly flickering with a bright light. At this moment, his appearance did not look like the infamous fool in the city. Boom! Forming a hand seal, Du Xiaofu's palm, a yellow qi flow surged out. His purple robe shook, causing the surrounding air to fluctuate, as if it was about to shatter the qi flow. His entire body was inexplicably filled with an inexplicable domineering aura. After successfully cultivating the first style, my martial vein should be around the level of other people's second grade. Feeling the changes in his body after comprehending the first style on the stone tablet in the past 10 years, Du Xiaofu's face revealed a satisfied smile. The mysterious first style on the stone tablet was as if it was naturally prepared for people with crippled martial veins. It could actually repair martial veins and allow people with crippled martial veins to cultivate. The dense mysterious cracks on the stone tablet were related to the repair of martial veins. In any case, Du Xiaofu was born in a martial cultivation family. At this moment, he felt that the level of his martial vein should be similar to that of other people's second-grade martial vein. However, Du Xiaofu also found that the level of his martial vein seemed to be somewhat special. Although it was similar to that of other people's second-grade martial vein, it was obviously not comparable to that of ordinary people's second-grade martial vein. After cultivating the first style, he could repair his martial vein to the level of other people's second-grade martial vein. If he could find the second and third styles in the future, then what level would his martial vein reach in the future? This made Du Xiaofu very much look forward to. At least, I can cultivate in the future. However, I have to find a way to get rid of this fool's title. Du Xiaofu withdrew his hand seal, and the qi slowly disappeared in his palm. His eyes revealed a slight smile. He was a well-known fool in Stone City. Over the years, everyone really treated him as a fool. Du Xiaofu had never cared about being called a fool. He was even happy to see others treat him as a fool. Only in this way would he be able to comprehend in front of the stone tablet without being disturbed. However, now that he had comprehended to a small extent, a fool on the road of martial cultivation would not receive the support of resources from the family. However, resources were what he needed now. Moreover, being treated as a fool every day was not a good thing. Du Xiaofu felt that he should slowly get back the things he had lost in the past 10 years. Bang bang! In the arena outside the Du family's door, more than a dozen young boys and girls of the Du family, who were either barehanded or holding swords, were fighting with more than a dozen burly men. Although these dozen or so Du clan juniors were young, they seemed to be able to handle the burly men who leaped onto the stage with ease. They were able to defeat the burly men who leaped onto the stage in 1 or 2 moves, causing many of the surrounding spectators to be secretly surprised and become even more respectful towards the Du clan. Isn't it just 3 moves? Let's go all out. This time, we must become the Du family's guards. Let's go all out. When the burly men saw how powerful the Du family's young boys and girls were, they became even more excited. If they were lucky enough to enter the Du family and learn a move or 2 from the Du family, wouldn't they be even more powerful? However, only a few of those burly men who had rushed up excitedly were able to withstand 3 moves without being defeated. In less than 2 hours, a total of 200 to 300 people had rushed up onto the stage eagerly. However, one by one, they were continuously thrown off the stage. However, the dozen or so young men and women were also gasping for breath. It was likely that they had used up most of their energy. Finally, there were 20 people who managed to withstand 3 moves. Many of them had injuries on their bodies. However, those who were able to remain on the arena were extremely excited. Everyone's gaze fell onto the arena. Du Xiaofu walked down from the barren mountain and no one noticed him. Du Xiaofu squeezed into the crowd to watch the show. He looked at the moves of his cousins on the arena. Sometimes, he would frown slightly, as if he was pondering about something. Then, his hands would faintly change under his long sleeves. Why are the Du family's martial techniques full of flaws? Could it be that I am overthinking it? He softly muttered to himself. In the crowd, Du Xiaofu's expression became more and more puzzled. In the past, he had seen the Du family's martial techniques. At that time, he could not understand them at all. Later on, after he comprehended the move on the stone tablet, he felt that he could somewhat understand the Du family's martial techniques. However, now that Du Xiaofu looked at the martial techniques of the Du family, he could clearly feel that there were many flaws. Many of them were full of flaws. Stop, the 20 spots have been filled. The recruitment is over. When the last lean man spat out a mouthful of blood as the price to withstand 3 moves, Du Qi, who was at the corner of the arena, walked forward. He looked at the men who had withstood 3 moves and said, "Congratulations on joining the Du family's guards. If you are injured, you can go to the Du family's medical hall for free treatment." "Thank you, Deputy Commander." The 20 men happily nodded their heads. As the Du family's guards, the treatment was indeed different. "Sigh, the spots have been filled. I came for nothing today. The Du family's people are really strong. They are so valiant at such a young age." After Du Qi announced the end of the recruitment, many of the men who were originally waiting to go on stage regretted their decision. If they had known earlier, they would have queued up earlier. The crowd of onlookers was also preparing to leave amidst the excited chatter. More than 10 Du family's juniors were also preparing to leave. To them, today was only a preliminary test. This kind of test was different from the usual spars in the family. "Please wait." At this moment, among the 20 men who had withstood 3 moves, a burly man with a face full of stubble, slightly tanned skin, and a face full of stubble leaped forward. His face slightly darkened, and then looking at Du Qi, he mustered up his courage and said, "Deputy Commander, is it true that as long as one defeats or draws with any of the Du family's juniors, one can become a guard captain?" Let me explain to everyone here. Little Yu will work hard to update his novel, but he will update his new novel during this period. I believe most of the brothers here know that it is impossible to update 4 or 5 times a day for a new novel during this period. Especially Little Yu's announcement the day before yesterday, it was very detailed. He said that he would start a new novel and would update it in 2 days. However, he was afraid that the brothers would wait for too long, so he insisted on updating it last night. The main reason was that he had been preparing for his new novel for more than a month. He originally had a lot of manuscripts, but a few days ago, he found a better idea. Therefore, he cut all the manuscripts that he had prepared. Many of the brothers here knew about this in detail. Of course, this would not affect Little Yu's current update. Some authors would only update twice during this period, but they would only update a little more than 2,000 words. Little Yu's first update was almost 4,000 words. However, brothers and sisters, please forgive me for the lack of updates during this period. Little Yu is really unable to update at the same speed as when the novel is published. All the authors are also unable to do so. There are some readers who don't understand, please don't slander me. I feel wronged. Chapter 3. Hey, someone wants to challenge the position of the captain of the guards, his courage is not small. Hearing these words, the onlookers who were about to disperse suddenly stopped in their tracks. It seemed that there was going to be a good show to watch. The dozen or so Du family juniors also turned around and stayed on the arena. They looked at each other and revealed a smile. Since someone wanted to be abused, they naturally would not be polite. Du Qi was also quite surprised. He slightly raised his head and his gaze fell on He Zi's body. Just now, he had also noticed this person's performance on the arena. This person should have officially practiced martial arts, but his martial veins were not high and his cultivation was only at the Hotian's second stage. However, among these 20 people, he was definitely at the front. Do you really want to challenge the position of the captain of the guards? Having the heart to fight is a good thing, but this position of the captain of the guards is not easy to challenge. Du Qi seemed to have some interest in He Zi. Among the juniors in the front courtyard, the weakest cultivation was now at the 4th stage of the Hotian 5th stage. Although this person was at the front of these juniors, if he wanted to tie or defeat these juniors, it would take a miracle. He Zi was somewhat trembling under Du Qi's invisible aura. He did not dare to look directly at Du Qi, but thinking of the benefits that would come with being the captain of the guards, and the fact that he also had distant relatives in the Du family, he was not afraid of offending this deputy commander. He slightly clenched his teeth and once again said to Du Qi, "Could it be that the Du family's words do not count? No matter what, let me try. Challenge the captain of the guards." The Du family cannot go back on their words. Some of the busybodies in the crowd also untimely began to jeer. For the onlookers, there was still a good show to watch, which naturally could not be better. Du Qi's gaze swept across the crowd that was jeering around the arena, and then looked at the somewhat unappreciative He Zi. His eyes flashed with some displeasure as he said, "Since it is like this, which young master or young lady of the Du family do you want to challenge?" He Zi swallowed his saliva, and his gaze slowly swept across the dozen or so youngsters and young ladies who had been eyeing him for a long time. Finally, he suddenly turned around and looked directly at a purple-robed youngster in the crowd and said, "He should also be the young master of the Du family? Du Xiaofu." Following He Zi's finger, numerous gazes finally pierced through the crowd and landed on the purple-robed youth. Then, the expressions of the Du family members became strange. Who else could that fellow be other than Du Xiaofu? They did not know when this fool had arrived. Usually, they would not see him in such a lively situation. The crowd of spectators around the stage immediately turned to look at Du Xiaofu. Only then did they realize that the dignified and foolish young master of the Du family was right beside them, and no one had noticed him earlier. Du Qi's face twitched as he looked at Du Xiaofu, who had arrived at an unknown time. Then, he frowned and said to He Zi, "That's right, that's young master Du Xiaofu. Naturally, he's the young master of my Du family. That's right. Today, I want to challenge this young master of the Du family. If I win, I should be able to become the captain of the guards." He Zi chuckled as his gaze landed on Du Xiaofu. He was extremely familiar with the situation of the Du family. Coincidentally, the famous young master Du Xiaofu was also present. This was like a blessing from the gods. Naturally, he would not let it go. Although challenging a fool was a little shameless, when he thought of the benefits of becoming the captain of the guards, even if he was scolded for being shameless, He Zi would accept it. Being able to become the captain of the guards was the most important thing. What, challenging that fool Du Xiaofu, that fellow is too shameless. The gazes of all the members of the Du family immediately turned interesting. Who did not know that Du Xiaofu was a person who could not cultivate and was also a fool? At this moment, looking at his somewhat dazed appearance, it was absolutely true that he was truly a fool. He Zi challenged Du Xiaofu. This fellow is really shameless. However, this time, the Du family will have to suffer in silence. They will not be able to voice out their grievances. Could it be that the members of the Du family do not dare to challenge him? Then let He Zi become the captain of the guards. Good job, He Zi. Beat up the young master of the Du family, haha. Within the densely packed crowd of onlookers, the gazes of each and every one of them became strange. With regards to the infamous fool young master, who in the entire stone city did not know of him, the busybodies in the crowd hid in the corners and began to jeer once again. If they jeered openly, they would not dare to offend the Du family. That fool. Today, he's bringing disaster to the entire Du family. What are we going to do now? The members of the Du family secretly cursed. No matter what, Du Xiaofu was still the young master of the Du family. If he was beaten down by a guard in one move, the Du family would lose a lot of face. If they lost, the treatment would be a piece of cake. However, the reputation of the Du family could not be lost. Du Qi's face twitched. Who would have thought that this person would shamelessly challenge Du Xiaofu? Today's guard recruitment was his responsibility. If the Du family's reputation was affected in the slightest, he, as the deputy commander, would not have a good ending. Who called me? Is someone looking for me? Within the crowd, Du Xiaofu had finished watching the commotion on the stage. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly felt his name faintly resounding in the surroundings. Everyone's gaze also landed on him. Finally, following the surrounding gazes, his gaze also landed on the stage. Amidst the loud jeering and strange gazes from the surroundings, He Zi's gaze secretly swept across the Du family members in front of the stage. When he saw that his distant relative was also among them, he did not reveal anything and became even bolder. "Young master of the Du family, please come up to the stage." He Zi looked at Du Xiaofu below the stage and cupped his fists together in a loud voice. However, there was no respect in his eyes like the other members of the Du family. Instead, there was a mocking smile in his eyes. "You want to challenge me?" Du Xiaofu was stunned for a moment. Only then did he understand. Then, he slightly raised his head. The clear gaze in his eyes slightly fluctuated as he looked at He Zi on the stage. With a slight smile, he said, "This isn't too good. You should first challenge the weakest of my cousins and see if there is even a sliver of a chance." Ah, this fool actually spoke today. Is he really stupid or is he pretending to be stupid? These words don't seem to be too stupid. This fool actually spoke today. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, the gazes of the Du family members instantly became surprised. He Zi looked at Du Xiaofu in front of the stage. Hearing the jeering from the surroundings, he became even bolder. In any case, he knew from the distant relative of the Du family that this foolish young master who could not cultivate did not have any status in the family. Thus, he was not afraid of offending him. He looked at Du Xiaofu and laughed loudly. Could it be that the dignified young master of the Du family does not dare to fight with me? If that is the case, then wouldn't I directly be able to become the captain of the guards? The young master of the Du family does not dare to enter the stage. This dignified Du family is only a so-so. Many of the jeering voices in the surroundings became even more unrestrained. Some disturbances also appeared in the crowd. This young master of the Du family, do you really not dare to fight? Then why don't the Du family directly invite me to become the captain of the guards? He Zi laughed and became even more proud. To be able to make a young master of the Du family suffer in front of him, He Zi should be the first person in Stone City. This kind of limelight was something he had never experienced before. Since you insist, then let's do as you wish. An indifferent voice came out from Du Xiaofu's mouth. Under the strange and complicated gazes of the crowd, Du Xiaofu's feet stomped on the ground. 2 streams of green qi suddenly spurted out from his heels. Borrowing the momentum, he leapt up and directly appeared in front of He Zi amidst the countless gasps from the surroundings of the stage. When he landed, the stage also shook. Impossible, how can this be? Looking at Du Xiaofu who had suddenly appeared in front of him, He Zi's face suddenly became shocked and sluggish. Just from that move just now, was this young master Du really as useless and stupid as the legend said? Du Xiaofu appeared in front of He Zi. The expression on his face did not change much as he stood with his hands behind his back. His purple robe fluttered slightly. His clear and bright eyes were filled with a clear light as he softly said to the lifeless He Zi, "Still not going to make your move? Impossible, I must be seeing things." When He Zi heard this, he finally regained his senses. His eyes must have been playing tricks on him. Could it be that he was afraid of a stupid young master? He Zi clenched his teeth and slightly bowed his body. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist. In front of his fist, 3 hazy half-transparent fist shadows enveloped Du Xiaofu. In a short instant, He Zi's 3 hazy fist shadows appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. The 3 hazy fist shadows condensed into a single point and smashed towards Du Xiaofu's chest. Break! Suddenly, just as the fist was about to reach Du Xiaofu's chest, a loud shout came from Du Xiaofu's mouth. The shout was like a dragon's roar and a divine elephant's cry. His clear and bright eyes flashed with a lightning-like glow. The purple robe around his body instantly fluttered and the entire stage trembled once again. With Du Xiaofu's feet as the center, cracks spread out on the stage. Gotcha! Everyone's gazes were shocked by this sudden shout and had yet to regain their senses, including He Zi himself. Following a low muffled sound, which seemed to be accompanied by the sound of bones breaking, everyone's eyes blurred. Then, they saw a burly figure fly out like a kite with a broken string. He directly flew out of the stage and landed heavily outside of the stage. On the stage, Du Xiaofu's figure was still standing straight with his hands behind his back. The strong wind caused his purple robe to flutter slightly, and there was an indescribable domineering aura surging out of nowhere. Pucci! After He Zi was sent flying out of the stage, he struggled to get up. He clutched his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. From the looks of it, a few of his ribs were definitely broken. His eyes were filled with shock as he looked at the thin and tall purple-robed youth on the stage. Not many people saw it clearly, but everyone saw it. The rumored foolish young master of the Du family did not even make a move. With a loud shout, He Zi was directly sent flying. It was a miraculous skill that made people gasp in amazement. Even if they saw it with their own eyes, it was still hard to believe. The jeering around the stage came to a sudden stop. Looking at the scene in front of them, they were so shocked that they could not retract their jaws for a long time. For those who had jeered and ridiculed Du Xiaofu, it was undoubtedly like they had been slapped in the face. Was that really a foolish young master who could not cultivate? The faces of those who had spoken rudely in the Du family were all unnatural at this moment. A burning sensation crawled up their cheeks. You guys continue, I'll go back first. On the stage, Du Xiaofu did not take another look at He Zi below the stage. He looked at Du Qi, who was not far away from him, and said these words. Then, he shook the long sleeves of his purple robe and walked away. Boom! Following Du Xiaofu's departure, the entire stage trembled. Then, starting from where Du Xiaofu was just standing, the stage began to crack and shatter. In the end, the entire stage collapsed, creating a huge hole in the center. The surrounding people stepped back one after another. Goo goo, the people around the stage looked at each other in shock. Many people swallowed their saliva. Brothers and sisters, below the front page of this article, click to add it to the bookshelf. Only by adding it to the bookshelf will it be able to be added to the bookshelf earlier and be updated earlier. Everyone can click to bookmark this article, recommend it, coffee, and so on. Xiao Yu urgently needs all of these. Chapter 4. Du Xiaofu did not meet anyone on his way back to the Du residence, probably because many people had gathered outside to watch the commotion, so he went straight back to his own courtyard. In fact, even if Du Xiaofu met the people of the Du family, even the servants and guards, they would not pay any attention to Du Xiaofu, the young master of the Du family. All these years, Du Xiaofu had been a transparent existence in the entire Du family. Although he was a transparent existence, the place Du Xiaofu lived in was not bad. It was an extremely spacious courtyard, and there were not many courtyards like this in the entire Du family. Only a few respected elders of the Du family had the right to live there. Du Xiaofu was able to live in such a courtyard because of his father. If not for his father being the third brother of the current head of the Du family, he would not have received such treatment all these years. Just based on the title of foolish young master on his head, he would not have had the chance to live in such a courtyard. Du Xiaofu went to the courtyard and saw a familiar drunk man sleeping soundly on a wicker chair, hugging a wine gourd in his arms, unwilling to let go. Father, why are you drunk here again? Du Xiaofu walked over and looked at the drunk man whose face was partially covered by his messy hair. His clear eyes were filled with heartache. For 16 years, Du Xiaofu's most vivid memory of his father, Du Tingxian, was of his father hugging a wine gourd in the courtyard and staring at the sky, the smell of alcohol filling the air, before falling asleep in a drunken stupor. Xiaofu, you're back. Are you hungry? Go to the kitchen and find something to eat. Du Tingxian woke up in a daze. He raised his hand to rub his drowsy eyes and sat up from the rattan chair. As he spoke, the smell of alcohol came out of his mouth. He was slightly taller than Du Xiaofu, but was similarly thin. From his messy hair, one could faintly see that if it wasn't for the smell of alcohol that filled the air, his face would be extremely heroic. Father, I'm not hungry. Let me help you to your room to rest. Du Xiaofu stepped forward to help his father, but was stopped by Du Tingxian, who stood up and shook the wine gourd in his hand. He smiled and said, "No need, there's no more wine. I'll go buy some." As his voice fell, Du Tingxian dragged his drunken body and staggered out of the courtyard, leaving Du Xiaofu standing alone in the courtyard. For as long as he could remember, Du Xiaofu remembered that the wine gourd was something that his father never let go of. As for his mother, to Du Xiaofu, she was a complete stranger and he had no recollection of her. After standing quietly for a while, Du Xiaofu found a mouthful of water in the hall and drank it, then directly returned to his room. In the room, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged and formed a seal with his hands. A wave of Xian qi suddenly surged out from his body, and within his palms, there seemed to be mysterious runes that were about to burst out. He murmured, "This mysterious technique is really not weak. Fortunately, I only used it slightly." A slight smile appeared on Du Xiaofu's face. Du Xiaofu had just used a move that he had comprehended from the ancient stone tablet in the past 10 years. However, he had only used a little strength. Therefore, he was even more shocked by the mysterious move. Only Du Xiaofu himself was clearly aware that the mysterious move within the stone tablet wasn't just capable of restoring his martial veins, it was also capable of cultivating profound energy. Most importantly, even though it was only a single move, it was all-encompassing and possessed boundless transformations. It was incomparably miraculous and overbearing. However, Du Xiaofu was now in a rather awkward situation. He had Xian qi in his body, but he did not have any cultivation realm. Although that technique could restore his martial veins and cultivate Xian qi in his body, it was not a cultivation technique after all. It could not allow him to have a cultivation realm. In other words, Du Xiaofu now had Xian qi in his body, but strictly speaking, he could not even be considered a Ho-Tian warrior at the first level. In this world, martial artists were divided into Ho-Tian warriors and Xian-Tian warriors. Only when one entered the Xian-Tian level could one be considered a true warrior. However, most people could stay in the Ho-Tian level for their entire lives and not enter the Xian-Tian level. It was enough to show that even if one could cultivate, the Xian-Tian level was not something that anyone could enter. Although he had been unable to cultivate, he was born in a martial arts family. In addition, he did not waste any time these years. Du Xiaofu was also clear about his current situation. The Ho-Tian level was divided into 9 levels, but with the Xian qi in his body, coupled with the mystery of the mysterious technique, he was afraid that facing the 8th or 9th level of the Ho-Tian level would not be a problem. My martial veins have recovered a little. Since I can already cultivate, I should go to the martial arts tower tomorrow to find a set of cultivation techniques to cultivate. Du Xiaofu pondered in his heart. He didn't know where the moves after that mysterious move were, and he didn't know how to cultivate them. Therefore, at present, he could only cultivate a set of cultivation methods first to raise his realm. Without the realm, the mysterious technique could have such power. Once the realm was increased, the mysterious technique would definitely become more and more powerful. This made Du Xiaofu's heart very much look forward to. Continue to comprehend the mysterious technique. After making a decision in his heart, Du Xiaofu condensed his hand seals, closed his eyes, and began to enter a state of comprehension. Although 10 years had passed, Du Xiaofu's comprehension of the first technique hidden in the ancient stone tablet had reached a small success. However, he also knew that the mysterious technique had only reached a small success and had not yet comprehended it to a perfect level. 10 years ago, Du Xiaofu was tested to be born with a crippled meridian. It was impossible for him to have any achievements on the road of martial cultivation. This made Du Xiaofu unable to accept it from the depths of his heart. He rushed out of the Du family's house in the midst of a storm and wanted to vent his anger in front of the stone tablet. Who knew that when a thunderbolt struck the stone tablet was unharmed? However, the thunderbolt that landed on the stone tablet seemed to have been transferred through the stone tablet and struck Du Xiaofu's body. After 3 days, Du Xiaofu woke up. During the 3 days that he was unconscious, in fact, he had entered a wonderful state of comprehension. When the thunderbolt struck, the mysterious talisman engravings within the ancient stone tablet appeared in his mind along with the thunderbolt. At first, Du Xiaofu did not know what those mysterious talisman engravings were. However, in that wonderful state, Du Xiaofu felt as if he had been enlightened. Finally, he learned that it was actually a powerful technique. That mysterious technique was actually specially prepared for people with crippled meridians. Martial veins were divided into 9 grades. Grade 1 was the lowest and grade 9 was the highest. The higher the grade of the martial vein, the greater the achievements on the road of martial cultivation. This was the unchanging law of the world for countless years, and also an unchanging fact. The martial vein that Du Xiaofu had examined was a crippled meridian. A crippled martial vein without a grade could be said to be unable to have any achievements on the road of martial cultivation. It was possible to practice some useless techniques to strengthen the body. That mysterious technique allowed Du Xiaofu to see hope from the bottom of the valley. The technique that he comprehended could actually repair the martial vein and allow people with crippled martial veins to cultivate. Du Xiaofu once again went under the stone tablet. In Du Xiaofu's eyes, the cracks on the stone tablet were no longer simple cracks. Instead, they were mysterious engravings related to the human body. Those cracks were like the dense meridians in the human body. They were incomparably profound and incomparably wonderful. In the end, one could comprehend and cultivate that mysterious technique. Du Xiaofu was immersed in that kind of comprehension. He was like a fish that had entered the boundless sea, unable to find the exit. After a full 10 years, Du Xiaofu finally comprehended that mysterious technique. From his comprehension, he also learned that this mysterious technique should not be just that. There should be a second and third technique behind it. However, in the ancient stone tablet of the Du family, there was only the first technique. In the room, as he comprehended, Du Xiaofu gradually entered a state of selflessness. Early in the morning, everything was silent. Traces of light appeared on the horizon in the east, carefully soaking the light blue sky. The first ray of sunlight pierced through the darkness before dawn, crossing the mountains and the sea, and finally enveloping the stone city. Du Xiaofu also woke up. When he opened his eyes, his vision was pitch black. However, his body was incomparably light, as if his marrow and meridians had been cleansed. It was indescribably comfortable. Caw. As if he was already used to it, Du Xiaofu stretched out his hand and pushed upwards. The sound of stone plates rubbing against each other rang out. Then, a stone lid slid open. Du Xiaofu stood up and appeared inside a stone coffin. Chapter 5. The sarcophagus hung in an ancient bluestone house. The bluestone house was like an ancient palace, covered with mottled bluestone floors. The entire stone house was filled with an ancient aura. The interior of the stone house was also very simple, with only a few memorial tablets of the Du family ancestors. On the 4 bluestone walls, there were some mysterious rune markings, extremely profound and complex. The markings were also very ancient. Overall, this bluestone house should be the location of an ancestral shrine. It's in here again. After sorting out his thoughts, Du Xiaofu didn't find it strange at all. In these 10 years, he didn't know how many times he had woken up in the Du family's ancestral shrine sarcophagus. Du Xiaofu still remembered that about 10 years ago, he had woken up and found himself in the ancestral shrine sarcophagus. At that time, he had been scared out of his wits. After that, he had woken up every morning to find himself in the sarcophagus. Du Xiaofu had been completely scared out of his wits, and had gone to find his eldest uncle and second uncle to tell them about it. However, at that time, he was already known as the foolish young master. No one in the clan believed his words. Some even said that he was naughty and foolishly climbed into the stone coffin in the ancestral hall and fell asleep. Some of the elders in the clan had even specially warned Du Xiaofu that the sarcophagus in the ancestral shrine was left behind by the Du family ancestors, and that he couldn't defend it. If he climbed into the sarcophagus again, he would definitely be severely punished. In these 10 years, although he didn't wake up in the sarcophagus every day, every month, Du Xiaofu would wake up in the ancestral shrine sarcophagus for a few days, completely unaware of how he had entered. In order to find out the reason, Du Xiaofu had even stayed up for several nights, even pretending to sleep. However, it was useless. When he should have appeared in the sarcophagus in the morning, he would still appear in the sarcophagus as usual, completely unaware of how he had fallen asleep. So in the end, Du Xiaofu got used to it and didn't mention it to the family. In any case, Du Xiaofu knew that even if he told the family about it, no one would believe him. He might even be punished by the family. Every time he woke up from the stone coffin, Du Xiaofu was surprised and puzzled at the beginning, but towards the end, he began to feel anticipation and excitement. This was because every time he woke up from the stone coffin, Du Xiaofu would discover that he could obtain great benefits. In the beginning, Du Xiaofu realized that every time he woke up from the sarcophagus, his clothes would be soaked in sweat. The sweat was dark and muddy, and even had a foul smell. After a few more times, the sweat became cleaner and cleaner, and the stench disappeared. During this time, Du Xiaofu naturally felt that his body was getting better and better. Every time he woke up from the sarcophagus, his body felt as if it had been cleansed. Even comprehending the mysterious move from the ancient stone tablet became much easier. At the same time, it also benefited the recovery of his martial vein. Every time he woke up from the sarcophagus, Du Xiaofu could feel the changes in his body's trash martial vein. It seemed to have become a little different from ordinary martial veins. However, Du Xiaofu himself was unable to describe the specific changes. The profound qi has become more abundant and condensed. This sarcophagus must be a treasure. Du Xiaofu jumped down from the suspended sarcophagus. Feeling the changes in his body, he turned his head to look at the suspended sarcophagus. His clear eyes were filled with doubt. He was certain that this sarcophagus was definitely a treasure. It's time to go to the martial scripture tower to find a set of cultivation methods to cultivate. Du Xiaofu murmured softly. The profound qi in his body had become more condensed and full. His whole body was filled with profound qi, and he had a feeling that his profound qi would explode at any time. This made Du Xiaofu somewhat dignified. The profound qi in his body seemed to explode, which was not a good thing. After a little tidying up, Du Xiaofu left the ancestral hall of the Du family. The ancestral hall was located in the back mountain of the Du family. He did not know which ancestor of the Du family had made the ancestral hall very hidden. Therefore, usually no one paid attention to this place, and no one would come to the ancestral hall for no reason. The martial scripture tower was the place where the Du family collected martial skills and cultivation methods, as well as all the valuable items. It was also an absolutely important place for the Du family. The elders of the Du family could not come to the martial scripture tower as they wished. If the younger generation wanted to come to the tower to pick martial skills and cultivation methods, they had to be ordered to come every time. However, every time the younger generation of the Du family went to the martial scripture tower, even if they were ordered to come, they might not be able to obtain the cultivation methods and martial skills smoothly. This was because the martial scripture tower was guarded by Elder Fu. If one wanted to get rid of Elder Fu, one had to bring something delicious or fun every time. Unless Elder Fu was in an extremely good mood, otherwise, one could forget about obtaining the martial skills or cultivation methods. Ordinary methods would not work in front of Elder Fu. Elder Fu was not an ordinary person. Even if he did not allow people to enter the martial scripture tower, everyone could only wait obediently. Elder Fu's name was Fuibai. The entire Du family knew that even the patriarch had to bow and greet Elder Fu respectfully. One could imagine his status as Elder Fu. It was said that Elder Fu had been in the Du family for a very long time. When the previous patriarch of the Du family was still alive, Elder Fu was already in the Du family. It could be said that Elder Fu was an absolute elder of the Du family for 3 generations. In the Du family, some people said that Elder Fu had cultivation, some said that Elder Fu had no cultivation, and some said that Elder Fu had a little bit of cultivation. However, no one really knew whether Elder Fu had cultivation or not. This was because the oldest member of the Du family had never seen Elder Fu make a move. However, this did not affect Elder Fu's position in the Du family for 3 generations. Moreover, he was guarding the martial scripture tower, which made Elder Fu's status in the Du family even higher. The martial scripture tower was a 3-story palace building located in the center of the Du family. It was not big, nor was it grand. It even looked a little shabby, but it had an indescribable ancient charm. When Du Xiaofu arrived at the martial scripture tower, he saw a sloppy old man in ragged clothes with a few strands of grass in his white hair. He was sweeping the ground outside the martial scripture tower left and right with an old broom that had been used for an unknown number of years, raising a large cloud of dust. The sloppy old man who was sweeping the ground sensed someone coming. When he raised his head and saw Du Xiaofu's figure, his expression changed drastically. He planned to leave without looking back. Cough. Du Xiaofu deliberately coughed and looked at the white-haired old man who was about to leave. He opened his mouth and said in a rather familiar and affectionate tone, "Old Bai, are you sweeping the ground?" Hearing Du Xiaofu's voice, the old man who turned around immediately looked embarrassed. He turned around and walked toward Du Xiaofu. His face was full of wrinkles, but he tried his best to squeeze out a smile. He chuckled, looking extremely cunning, and said, "Big brother, I didn't see you just now. Why are you here?" Brothers, please bookmark more. Under the front page of this article, click Add to Bookshelf to bookmark. Only by bookmarking more can it be put on the shelf earlier. Adding more chapters will take up a few seconds of everyone's time. After you've finished reading, please bookmark it. I'll also treat everyone to coffee and recommend more votes. Thank you. Chapter 6. At this moment, if anyone from the Du family were to see this old man addressing Du Xiaofu in such a manner, they would probably flip the entire Du family upside down. Who is this old man? Fu Bai, Elder Fu. Even the patriarch would have to bow before him, but he actually addressed a foolish young master of the Du family as Big Brother. It would be strange if they weren't shocked. I came to see you, and also wanted to take a look at the martial scripture tower. Du Xiaofu seemed to be very satisfied with Fu Bai's performance. On the other hand, when Fu Bai heard that Du Xiaofu wanted to go to the martial scripture tower, he immediately curled his lips, revealing his yellowed teeth. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "What are you going there for? You should know that not just anyone can casually enter the martial scripture tower. Don't forget, I'm your big brother." "What, do you have a problem with that?" Du Xiaofu stared straight at Fu Bai, not giving the old man any face. He raised his eyebrows and lightly said, "What was the oath?" "The loser will call the winner Big Brother, and will listen to Big Brother unconditionally. If you violate this oath, you will have to pee frequently for the rest of your life, and your butt will grow hemorrhoids." "No problem, no problem. Who told you to be my big brother?" Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Fu Bai immediately withered. He squeezed out a brilliant smile and softly said, "Go on in, I'll help you keep an eye on things. You can see whatever you want, and if there's anything you need, feel free to look for me." Old Bai, I like this attitude of yours. Don't worry, I also promised you that I won't not give you face in front of others. Du Xiaofu patted Fu Bai's shoulder with satisfaction, then strode into the martial scripture tower. If only this little bastard was really stupid, but unfortunately, he's just pretending. Looking at Du Xiaofu's back, Fu Bai gritted his teeth in hatred. If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have made such a vicious oath. Fu Bai was still on the verge of tears when he recalled the bet he made back then. He still couldn't figure out how he could have lost, and to a fool no less. This was the only time Fu Bai had lost a bet in his entire life, and it was an unclear loss. The poison curse was also cast by him. Thinking about the curse, Fu Bai couldn't help but rub his shriveled butt. "Elder Fu, I was ordered to go to the second floor to pick a set of martial skills. At this moment, a well-dressed youth ran out happily. Those who were able to come to the martial scripture tower to choose martial skills had obtained rewards from the clan. What's the point of learning so many martial skills? Don't bite off more than you can chew. Sweep the floor for me first. Fuibai's mood wasn't too good to begin with, so his expression sank. He threw the broom in his hand to the youth and left without looking back. Yes, Elder Fu. The youth's happy expression turned into one of grievance, but there was nothing he could do. He grabbed the broom in his hand and obediently began to sweep the floor, not daring to slack off. This wasn't the first time Du Xiaofu came to the martial scripture tower. Although he didn't come too openly, he was very clear about the locations of the Du family's cultivation techniques and martial skills. Du Xiaofu's purpose in coming to the martial scripture tower was to find a suitable cultivation technique. Cultivation techniques were divided into 4 grades: Heaven, Earth, Profound, and Yellow. The strongest was the Heaven grade, while the lowest was the Yellow grade. Every grade was further divided into elementary, middle, and high grade. The Du family's main branch mainly cultivated 3 sets of cultivation techniques. It was said that the strongest cultivation technique was called the Purple Qi Chaoyang scripture. It was at the elementary grade of the profound grade. Only the patriarch and a few important people in the clan could cultivate it. As for the other disciples, most of them cultivated the Mystic Yang Vast Qi technique and Bright Moon's secret art, which were also at the high grade of the yellow grade. Du Xiaofu went up to the 3rd floor of the martial scripture tower with ease. That was where the Du family's high-grade martial skills and cultivation techniques were located. Since he planned to cultivate a cultivation technique, Du Xiaofu planned to cultivate a high-grade one. Since no one in the clan cared about him, he couldn't care less about the places that violated the rules. Sometimes, being treated as a fool had its benefits. If he was discovered, there was nothing he could do. He had to cultivate first. The 3rd floor of the martial scripture tower was extremely spacious. There weren't many things placed there, and it emitted an ancient aura. Of course, other than the Du family's patriarch, there weren't many people who could casually come to the 3rd floor like Du Xiaofu. Where is the Purple Qi Chaoyang scripture? Du Xiaofu wanted to find the Purple Qi Chaoyang scripture, which was the highest cultivation technique in the Du family. However, he couldn't find it on the 3rd floor. Instead, he found the Mystic Yang Vast Qi technique and Bright Moon's secret art. However, Du Xiaofu didn't want to cultivate these 2 cultivation techniques. Xiao! Suddenly, Du Xiaofu, who was looking everywhere for the Purple Qi Chaoyang scripture, heard the sound of wind breaking behind him. A gust of wind instantly appeared behind him. Who is it? Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly flashed. Instinctively, he quickly retreated while turning sideways. He condensed a hand seal, and a gust of profound qi leaked out from his body. Then, the profound qi circled around his body in a strange arc. Finally, it gathered in the palm of his hand. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist, and a fist seal condensed. There were faint talisman patterns jumping around, and it directly collided with the gust of wind behind him. Qi La. The gust of wind dissipated, blowing the hair in front of Du Xiaofu's forehead. He staggered back 3 steps, and finally leaned against the wall to stabilize his body. He raised his head and looked up. The black and bright eyes on his resolute and determined face blinked. The entire 3rd floor of the martial scripture tower was empty. There wasn't even a shadow of a ghost. Hey, what is this? Although he didn't see anyone, Du Xiaofu saw a special object. An object had somehow fallen down from a crevice in the corner of the tower, and it just so happened to land on Du Xiaofu's forehead. If it weren't for the shaking of the wall when he retreated a few steps, the object in the crevice of the tower wouldn't have fallen down. Du Xiaofu extended his hand to grab the object. It was a small, bronze-colored pagoda. It was only the size of a thumb and appeared very inconspicuous. There was a dense layer of dust on its surface. It would appear that no one would normally notice this object. After looking at the inconspicuous pagoda for a while, Du Xiaofu didn't find anything special about it. It was probably just a small plaything. What he was thinking about was who had ambushed him earlier. Who was it? Du Xiaofu kept the small pagoda in his bosom. He was still wondering who had attacked him just now, but he could only plan to get out first before thinking about anything else. Although he did not find the purple Qi Chaoyang scripture, given Du Xiaofu's personality, since he had come to the martial scripture tower, he would not return empty-handed. Although he couldn't cultivate the purple Qi Chaoyang scripture, he could still cultivate the martial techniques. Why couldn't he use that mysterious move whenever he attacked in the future? After looking through the introductions of some of the martial techniques, Du Xiaofu picked up a martial technique and stuffed it into his clothes. Next, he seemed to have noticed something special and kept it as well. In the end, Du Xiaofu went to the second floor of the martial scripture tower and searched around. Only then did he leave, satisfied. Chapter 7. Walking out of the martial repository, Du Xiaofu planned to find Fu Bai to ask about the purple Qi Chaoyang scripture, but he saw a youth sweeping the floor, and Fu Bai was nowhere to be seen. When the young man saw Du Xiaofu walk out of the martial scripture tower, he held a broom in his hand and looked surprised and puzzled. From yesterday until today, the name Du Xiaofu had spread throughout the entire Du family. Everyone was talking about what happened on the stage yesterday. To be able to send someone flying with a shout, what was going on? Could it be that this foolish young master was no longer foolish? Seeing someone, Du Xiaofu tactfully left. He could only ask Fu Bai again next time. After all, the martial repository was not a place that anyone could enter. If someone were to cause trouble, it would be troublesome for him to enter in the future. The inner courtyard of the Du family was lush with greenery, separated by pavilions. Adding to the fact that the Du family had existed for a long time in Stone City, the buildings were ancient and the scenery was not bad. Du Xiaofu left the martial repository and walked along a small gravel path. In the surrounding lush scenery, his footsteps could not help but slow down. Hee hee. In front of the gravel path, there was suddenly a burst of laughter. Du Xiaofu raised his head and looked in the direction of the voice. More than a dozen young men and young women were walking over. The young man and young woman at the front were particularly outstanding in the crowd, making the young man and young woman behind them become a contrast. Seeing this group of people, Du Xiaofu could not help but frown. Du Xiaofu recognized the youth at the front. His name was Du Hao, the grandson of the Du family's great elder. He was older than Du Xiaofu by a year, 17 this year. It was said that he was the absolute leader of the Du family's younger generation, and could be considered the leader of the Du family's younger generation. Du Xiaofu naturally would not forget this Du Hao. Even though he had a trash martial vein, he was still the young master of the Du family. Similarly, he received monthly elixirs and allowance from the family, but his monthly elixirs and allowance did not fall into his hands. As soon as he received them, they would be snatched away. The one who snatched them the most was Du Hao in front of him. This kind of thing was naturally forbidden in the family, but because of the words "foolish young master," the elders in the family turned a blind eye and did not care at all. Perhaps the elders in the family also thought that it was a waste for a fool to take those elixirs, and might as well give them to someone else. Therefore, in the end, Du Xiaofu editor, Lucas Du Xiaofu Hao editor, Du Xiaofu Hao was a fool. At this moment, Du Xiaofu took a second look at the eye-catching young lady in front of him. She was not from the Du family, and the few young men and young ladies accompanying her were also not from the Du family. The young lady was extremely beautiful. She was still young, but she had already grown into a slender and elegant woman. She had fair skin and an exquisite face. Occasionally, she would smile, causing the surrounding Du family youths to reveal infatuated expressions. Especially Du Hao, who had been passionately accompanying her. While Du Xiaofu was sizing them up, the dozen or so boys and girls also saw Du Xiaofu. Their laughter gradually died down as their gazes landed on Du Xiaofu. Although there were a few youths in front of him who could be considered as his cousins in terms of seniority, Du Xiaofu had never interacted with these so-called siblings ever since he was 6 years old. The only time he interacted with them was when he would receive the mocking gazes and postures of these cousins at the ancestral shrine every year during the ancestral worship. Therefore, Du Xiaofu Hao Yu did not look at them too much and walked straight ahead. Du Xiaofu, move aside. What if you offend a guest? Du Hao frowned and looked at Du Xiaofu, who was walking over, with some displeasure. He didn't expect to meet this fool here. His eyes were filled with mockery. He didn't want to be disturbed by this fool. Du Xiaofu lifted his head indifferently. He did not intend to pay attention to Du Hao and continued to walk forward. Did you not hear what I said? Move aside. Seeing that Du Xiaofu did not move aside and continued to walk over, Du Hao finally fixed his gaze on Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's footsteps came to a halt. He lifted his head and looked at Du Hao. His clear eyes moved slightly as he said, "This road is not narrow. You guys go your way and I'll go mine. There's no need for me to move aside." Du Xiaofu's indifferent tone caused Du Hao's face to freeze. It was as if he felt that the fool today was really different from usual. In the past, this fool would turn around and leave when he saw him. He did not expect that today, he would contradict him in front of a beauty. Du Hao's face immediately darkened. "Brother Hao, there's no need to talk to this fool. He's so stupid that he can't be explained clearly." A well-dressed young man behind Du Hao saw this and immediately stepped forward. As his voice faded, he glanced at Du Xiaofu and pushed Du Xiaofu with one hand. He mocked, "You fool, you better move aside." Kacha! A clear kacha sound was heard. Before the well-dressed young man could finish speaking, a miserable shriek was suddenly emitted from his mouth. Ah! A miserable shriek was emitted from the well-dressed young man's mouth. The wrist that he had extended towards Du Xiaofu had unknowingly landed in Du Xiaofu's palm and flipped 180 degrees. With a kacha sound, one of his arms was dislocated and broken. His face instantly turned into the color of a pig's liver. All of this happened so quickly that no one could clearly see how it happened. Du Gui, in terms of seniority, I'm your cousin. The Du family has an order of seniority. You dare to disrespect me? This is a lesson for you. Du Xiaofu lowered his palm and stood with his hands behind his back. His voice contained a majestic aura that made it difficult for others to resist. All of this happened so suddenly that the dozen or so young men and women were dumbfounded. Only the beautiful young lady's eyebrows slightly raised. Her gaze unexpectedly fell on Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu, you dare to make a move. Du Hao was the first to regain his senses. He lightly inhaled a breath of air and immediately stared at Du Xiaofu. There was no anger on his face, but a smile. He felt that this fool was indeed somewhat abnormal today. Perhaps the rumors in the clan were true. This fool had returned to normal and could even cultivate. Seniority is an order. The Du family has rules. I'm only teaching him the rules. Du Xiaofu looked at Du Hao and said, "Seniority is an order indeed. My good cousin, your brain has always been a little slow. It seems that as your elder brother, I have to teach you some rules today." Du Hao looked at Du Xiaofu. However, the smile on his face revealed a deep ridicule that was not hidden. He was just a fool. Even if he had recovered, how strong could he be? You can't teach me. Du Xiaofu shook his head and raised his head to look at the beautiful young lady beside Du Hao. Then, he continued to look at Du Hao and said, I know that you just want to attract the attention of the young lady beside you. His voice paused slightly. The corner of Du Xiaofu's mouth twitched. With a somewhat playful tone, he continued, however, I have to say that you are very immature. I feel that your strength is not enough. When the time comes, you will not be in the limelight and instead lose face. Then, the gains will not make up for the losses. You, Du Hao was secretly mocked. At that moment, he could no longer maintain the smile on his face and completely darkened. He completely did not expect that the foolish young master of the past would take such a big turn today. He sneered and said, I heard that you were in the limelight during the trial arena of Du Yu and Du Shua. At first, I did not believe it. Now, it seems that it is true. Then, let me see what level you have reached. Another day. It is not good to be seen as a joke by outsiders. Today, I also have things to do. Don't neglect the young lady beside you. Flinging his long sleeves, Du Xiaofu directly strode away. He did not turn back to look at Du Hao again. Du Xiaofu, you, seeing Du Xiaofu leave indifferently, Du Hao's gloomy face twitched. It was as if something was stuck in his heart. The beautiful young lady's gaze looked at the back of the purple-robed youth. He had a thin body, but his back seemed to be particularly tall and straight. Then, she said to the gloomy Du Hao, "Young Master Hao, is this person a brother of your Du family? How come I have not seen him before? Brothers, don't forget to bookmark and recommend tickets. Xiao Yu, continue to write." Chapter 8. The young girl's exquisite curves were accentuated by her long dress, causing the surrounding youths to feel embarrassed, but they couldn't help sneaking glances. He is indeed a member of our Du family, his name is Du Xiaofu. Hearing the young girl's words, Du Hao could only stare fiercely at Du Xiaofu's back. Otherwise, he would really neglect the beauty beside him. He was just an idiot. Even if he wasn't an idiot now, it wouldn't be too late to teach him a lesson later. As long as he was in the Du family, there would be many opportunities to teach him a lesson. Looking at the young girl beside him, he intentionally added, "His father is a useless drunkard, and he is just an idiot." Watching the tall and straight figure disappear into the gravel path, the young girl was puzzled. "So he is Du Xiaofu, is he really an idiot? Miss Yi, I'll continue to walk with you." Du Hao squeezed out a smile at the young girl, his gaze fixed on the thin figure in the purple robe, a trace of fierceness quietly flashing through his eyes. Du Xiaofu returned to the courtyard in the evening, but he didn't see his father. After all these years, Du Xiaofu had already gotten used to it. He guessed that his father had drunk too much and fallen asleep somewhere. Although he was worried, there was nothing he could do about it. After returning to his room and spacing out for a while, Du Xiaofu took out 2 scrolls and a strange animal bone from his bosom. The 2 scrolls were covered with mysterious inscriptions, emitting a sharp and heavy aura. They were the martial skills he had found on the 3rd and 2nd floor of the martial arts tower. The first martial skill was called Stormy Waves Palm, a Xiantian martial skill Du Xiaofu had found on the 3rd floor of the martial arts tower. The other martial skill, Oscillating Fist, was found on the 2nd floor of the martial arts tower. Although these 2 martial skills were both at the Xiantian level, it was obvious that the Stormy Waves Palm was a bit better. Otherwise, the Stormy Waves Palm wouldn't have been on the 3rd floor and the Oscillating Fist on the 2nd floor. Below the Xiantian martial skills were the Houtian martial skills. However, Du Xiaofu didn't have much interest in cultivating Houtian-level martial skills. Du Xiaofu had seen Du Shui, Du Yu, and the other cousins' Houtian martial skills that were full of flaws. Du Xiaofu had thought that those kinds of martial skills wouldn't be of much use even if they were to cultivate them. After obtaining the Stormy Wave Palm from the martial repository, Du Xiaofu knew that Xiantian martial skills were extremely difficult to learn. He was worried that it would be difficult to successfully learn it, so he went to the 2nd floor to look for the Oscillating Fist, which seemed to be of a lower level. Beside the 2 martial skill scrolls was a strange beast bone. It was about the size of a palm and was hard to hold with one's hand. There were many traces of veins on it, as if they were deep inside the beast bone. The beast bone was also something that Du Xiaofu had obtained from the 3rd floor of the martial repository. It was also placed in an inconspicuous place. Normally, no one would go through it. When Du Xiaofu saw the beast bone for the first time, he felt a strange fluctuation in his heart for no reason. This fluctuation seemed to come from the damaged martial vein in his body that had only been repaired by 10 to 20%. Therefore, Du Xiaofu put away the beast bone to study it carefully in the future. "I'll find a place to try cultivating Oscillating Fist first." After thinking about his situation, Du Xiaofu decided to try cultivating the lower-level Oscillating Fist first. In any case, he had Xian Qi in his body. Although he didn't have a cultivation method, it wouldn't affect his ability to cultivate martial skills. Unless he had no Xian Qi in his body, he wouldn't be able to cultivate martial skills. Naturally, the room wasn't suitable for cultivating martial skills. Du Xiaofu had no choice but to find a secluded place to cultivate martial skills. Above the curtain of night, there were many stars. In the dense forest behind the mountain, the moonlight was like a ribbon that penetrated through the gaps between the dense leaves. It left behind fine specks of light in the dusky forest. In the distant mountain range, the roars of wild beasts could occasionally be heard. On a small hill, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged. His hands formed a seal, and Xian Qi surged. A burst of Xian Qi gushed out from his palms and landed on the scroll in front of him. As the Xian Qi landed on the scroll, the entire scroll began to emit specks of light. The mysterious patterns flickered and slowly unfolded. It was quite magical. In the end, the mysterious patterns seemed to want to jump out. One by one, the mysterious patterns gathered and formed a light tide of mysterious patterns. It was as if a human figure was cultivating a set of fist techniques in front of him. Then, the mysterious light tide of mysterious patterns surged into the space between Du Xiaofu's eyebrows, who gradually closed his eyes. When the mysterious patterns entered the space between his eyebrows, Du Xiaofu's body, which was sitting cross-legged, trembled. The light shrouded him, and his resolute face flickered with a sparkling luster. Finally, everything calmed down, and the light on the scroll disappeared. Phew! About an hour later, Du Xiaofu, who was sitting cross-legged, exhaled. His eyelashes fluttered, and his clear eyes suddenly opened. There was a flash of light in his eyes. Hadouken, a Xiantian-level martial skill. When cultivated to the great accomplishment level, there will be 9 layers of Hadouken. With each layer stacked, the power will be doubled, and it will be enough to shatter the opponent's bones. Du Xiaofu murmured. This was the information about Hadouken that he had obtained from the secret patterns of the Hadouken. Start cultivating. After a while, Du Xiaofu stood up. He recalled the cultivation method that he had just obtained from the information about Hadouken. Hand seals suddenly condensed in Du Xiaofu's hands. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist, and he began cultivating. When he punched out, the air faintly fluctuated, the curtain of night covered the sky. The moonlight was like silk, and the stars were dotted in the sky. A young lady stood quietly in a simple and unadorned stone pavilion. Her appearance was extremely beautiful. She had fair skin, an exquisite face, and long hair that flowed down. She wore a long dress that covered her body, giving her an indescribable beauty and elegance. A pair of bright eyes flickered under the moonlight, causing her elegance to have an additional cool aura. Zijin. A clear voice sounded, and a thin middle-aged man slowly walked out. He was around 40 years old, and had an extraordinary temperament. He said, "How was your trip to the Du family? Did you gain anything special?" "Father." The young girl turned her head and smiled. Her red lips opened slightly, and she said, "The Du family's current generation is not weak. Their overall level should be slightly higher than the other families. However, I think that the other 3 families are also hiding something. The Du family is not special, but what?" The thin middle-aged man asked with interest. "There seems to be a foolish young master in the Du family. This time, I accidentally met him in the Du family. However, he seems to be a little different from the rumors." The young girl smiled. She still remembered the way the purple-robed young man spoke and acted. His eyes were clear, and he was definitely not a fool like the rumors said. Also, the strength that he showed when he attacked was something that even she could not see through. "You should be talking about Du Xiaofu, the 3rd son of the Du family. This 3rd son of the Du family is a little mysterious. When he left the Stone City, it is said that he was doing well outside. 16 years ago, he suddenly returned to the Stone City and brought back a son." The middle-aged man said softly. Then, a slight fluctuation appeared in his eyes. He looked at the bright moon in the sky and said, "The Stone City has been peaceful for more than 10 years. It's time to liven things up. In these years, no family has relaxed. During this period of time, you should also work hard to cultivate and try to take another step forward. Also, recently, the Savage Beast mountain range has not been peaceful. You should not go in rashly to avoid encountering any danger. Okay, I know. The young girl nodded to the middle-aged man. She turned around and continued to look at the bright moon in the sky. The night wind blew gently, and her fine black hair fluttered behind her back. Chapter 9. 3 days later, the sun was setting in the west. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on the earth, and a large expanse of fiery clouds occupied the western horizon. In the quiet mountain forest, Du Xiaofu's hands formed a series of seals. Waves of profound energy surged within his palms, and finally flowed through a few specific meridians and Xian acupoints in his body. In one breath, the profound energy once again converged within his palms. When the last bit of profound energy gathered in his palm, the aura on Du Xiaofu's body instantly became fierce and terrifying. It was as if a ferocious beast had awoken from its slumber, and its might was shocking. Caw-caw! The ground beneath his feet cracked, and his purple robes fluttered in the wind. The surrounding space also shook with a loud bang. It was as if there were countless waves of energy from the heavens and the earth endlessly pouring into Du Xiaofu's body. In the end, it also converged around his palms, causing the surrounding space to ripple like the surface of a boiling water. Stormy Waves Palm. Du Xiaofu struck out with his palm, and profound energy surged. Within the silent mountain forest, an explosive sound that was like muffled thunder suddenly rang out, and then, wherever the palm print passed, waves of energy that could be seen with the naked eye spread out. In the end, the palm landed on a tree trunk that was the size of 2 bowls. Waves after waves of shockwaves crashed into the tree trunk without stopping. Boom! The sturdy tree trunk shook with a loud bang, and then broke. Sonic booms continuously reverberated in the silent mountain forest. Countless leaves scattered and drifted, completely blocking the line of sight. The surrounding birds and beasts were frightened, and immediately flapped their wings, roaring as they fled into the distance. In the end, everything calmed down, and the surroundings were a mess. Looking at the broken tree, Du Xiaofu's clear eyes showed some surprise, but then his expression changed slightly. He muttered softly, "Stormy Waves Palm is indeed much stronger than Oscillating Fist. However, why do I feel that there are still many flaws in these two martial techniques? I should be able to improve on them." In the span of 3 days, Du Xiaofu had successfully mastered the Xiantian martial techniques, Oscillating Fist and Stormy Waves Palm. Du Xiaofu felt that compared to the mysterious technique he had comprehended from the stone tablet in the past 10 years, cultivating these two Xiantian-level martial techniques was simply too easy. Whether it was Oscillating Fist or Stormy Waves Palm, Du Xiaofu felt that as long as he compared them to the mysterious technique he had comprehended, and then after a little comprehension, he would be able to successfully cultivate them after 2 or 3 attempts. Therefore, Du Xiaofu was able to master Oscillating Fist in 1 night. Then, after 2 days and 1 night, he successfully mastered Stormy Waves Palm. The Xian Qi in Oscillating Fist has 3 transformations, going through Qi Shi, Yun Men, Kong Zui, and finally Xiao Fu. If I can go through Taiyuan and Xiao Shang in between, it will be enough to fill my Xian Qi and increase its power. There are still a few acupoints that don't have much use, but if I reduce them, it will make Oscillating Fist faster and more agile, and reduce many of the flaws. Du Xiaofu muttered softly, "The same goes for Stormy Waves Palm. If more Xian Qi is gathered in Tian Men and Tian Qi, it won't be strong enough and won't be continuous enough. At that time, it will truly have the momentum of stormy waves, and its power will increase by a lot. There are still many flaws and shortcomings in other areas." Du Xiaofu sank into a state of deep contemplation. Oscillating Fist and Stormy Waves Palm were not weak, especially Stormy Waves Palm, which was much stronger than Oscillating Fist. After successfully cultivating the Oscillating Fist and the Stormy Waves Palm, Du Xiaofu discovered that these 2 sets of martial skills had quite a few flaws and loopholes. In fact, there were quite a number of flaws and loopholes. Perhaps, I can perfect the areas where these martial techniques are lacking. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu raised his head, and a light flashed in his clear eyes. Then, he sank into a state of deep contemplation. A person without any cultivation had successfully cultivated 2 Xiantian martial techniques in 3 days, and now he was actually planning to perfect them. At this moment, even if there were Pulsation Realm warriors present, they would want nothing more than to find a hole to hide in. This was simply too much of a blow to their confidence. Moreover, no one would believe that a person without any cultivation realm could successfully cultivate 2 Xiantian martial techniques in 3 days, unless they saw a ghost. It was simply impossible for a normal person to accomplish such a feat. A few days passed by slowly. Early in the morning breeze blew gently. The weather was clear and the sky was blue. Oscillating fist. Early in the morning, in the forest behind the mountain, Du Xiaofu's hands quickly formed a series of hand seals. Waves of Xian Qi flowed through the meridians in his body, and finally gathered in the center of his palm. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist, and in a split second, a shocking aura burst out. His eyes flashed, and he directly punched towards a rock in front of him. Pang pang pang. Low muffled sounds rang out one after another, and a total of 13 sounds rang out. Waves of shocking Xian Qi waves formed a total of 13 layers. The layers overlapped each other, and the aura seemed to have multiplied, becoming more and more shocking. When it reached the 13th layer, the aura had already reached a terrifying stage. Like a shock wave, it finally landed heavily on the rock. Pang! As the fist landed, the hard rock, which was the size of 2 people, exploded with a loud bang, and turned into a large number of small pieces of rock that shot out. Oscillating fist, 9 layered waves. Each wave was more difficult than the previous one. But at this moment, if the experts of the Du family were here, they would probably be dumbfounded. Even if they saw it with their own eyes, they would still find it hard to believe. Just now, when Du Xiaofu used oscillating fist, he had blasted out 13 layered waves. Compared to the original 9 layered waves, it was 4 layers stronger. The difficulty and power of that could be imagined. After perfecting the oscillating fist, its power is indeed much stronger than before. Looking at the effect of his perfected oscillating fist, Du Xiaofu's face revealed a happy expression, as if he had completed a huge project. For a full 4 days, Du Xiaofu was completely immersed in perfecting the oscillating fist, and finally achieved satisfactory results. In perfecting the oscillating fist, Du Xiaofu finally understood that perfecting a martial technique was much more difficult than practicing a martial technique. He knew that if it weren't for the inspiration he received from the ancient stone tablet, he wouldn't have been able to perfect his Hadouken. It took me 4 days to perfect the oscillating fist. Let's go back and see if father has returned. After a few days, I'll perfect the stormy waves palm. Du Xiaofu did not plan to continue perfecting the stormy waves palm. He had not returned for a few days, and in these few days, he had only casually picked some wild fruits nearby to satisfy his hunger. This flute sound has been coming out for a few days already. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu raised his head. In the depths of the vast mountain range, there was a melodious flute sound. The flute sound was crisp and mellow, and at times it was melodious and lingering. In these few days, when he was comprehending and perfecting his martial technique, he would occasionally hear this melodious flute sound, but he did not know where it came from. There was also an extremely special matter. When it was late at night, in the direction of the Savage Beast mountain range, there would be more and more beast roars. Du Xiaofu did not pay too much attention to the flute sound and beast roars. After packing up a little, he directly went down the mountain. Hey, who is that? Come here. The back of the mountain was verdant and lush. Just as Du Xiaofu went down the mountain, he heard a somewhat ear-piercing voice. Following which, an old man of about 50 years old appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. Chapter 10. What's the matter? Du Xiaofu stopped in his tracks and raised his head slightly, replying indifferently. Du Xiaofu naturally knew this old man. He was the housekeeper of the Du family's backyard, Du Hai. Although his position could not compare to the housekeeper of the Du family's front yard, His position in the Du family was not low. Normally, he did not pay much attention to the young masters of the Du family. Of course, if Du Hai saw other young masters of the Du family, he would bow and scurry over from afar. Today is the annual contest between the younger generation of the family. The prizes this time are extremely high. Why aren't you going? Don't blame me for not informing you, this is a rare opportunity. Du Hai's back was extremely straight, as if telling Du Xiaofu this news was a form of charity. His gaze towards Du Xiaofu contained some ridicule and mockery. A fool like him, it would be useless even if he participated in the contest. Is it the annual contest again? Du Xiaofu felt that time really passed a little too quickly, but he didn't pay attention to Du Hai and directly left. This fool, does he really want to participate in the contest? How did the Du family produce such a fool? Gazing at Du Xiaofu's back, Du Hai coldly smiled indifferently. He hummed a little tune as he walked away with his hands behind his back. There were still a few new servant girls waiting for him to teach them. Otherwise, he would have gone to watch the fun long ago. Every year, the contest between the younger generation of the family was held at the Du family's drill grounds. When Du Xiaofu had just arrived outside the drill grounds, he could already hear the clamor and excitement. Coming to the drill grounds, Du Xiaofu had only wanted to watch the fun. In the middle of the drill ground, hundreds of disciples from the main and side branches of the right age were already eagerly waiting. A few particularly outstanding young men and women stood proudly among them, while the other young men and women clustered behind them. Hey, look, that fool is here. As Du Xiaofu arrived at the drill grounds, people immediately noticed him. Following which, more and more gazes fell on Du Xiaofu's body. I heard that the fool seems to have recovered. I wonder if it's true. It's probably hard to recover. Back then, the clan had wasted so much manpower and money, but they still couldn't cure it. Now, it's probably hard to recover. Even an idiot has come to participate in the clan's competition. Are you here to see who's the idiot? This idiot also came to participate in the clan's competition. I'm afraid he's just looking for a beating. If this idiot was normal, he would be quite good-looking. Following Du Xiaofu and the other two's provocation, sounds of mockery and ridicule filled the air. Many young girls looked at Du Xiaofu with pity. In response to the unrestrained mockery, disdain, and regretful sighs from the surrounding people, Du Xiaofu's resolute and determined face stiffly swept his pitch-black eyes across the mocking clan members. However, his gaze remained clear and bright, as if the mockery and disdain did not affect his mood in the slightest. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu seemed to have sensed something. He slightly raised his head and saw that among the group of young boys and girls of about the same age, there were quite a few gazes that had also landed on him. Among them, Du Gui, whom he had taught a lesson that day, was currently pointing at him with a cold gaze, and whispering something into the ear of a well-dressed young man beside him. Du Xiaofu knew that well-dressed young man. He was called Du Chong, Du Gui's elder brother, and was also one of the most outstanding members of the younger generation of the Du family. Beside Du Chong, there was also Du Hao, whom Du Xiaofu was not unfamiliar with. There was also another young man called Du Yan, whom Du Xiaofu was also familiar with. Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yan were currently standing in the middle of the square, surrounded by many young boys and girls. This showed that the three of them had an extraordinary status amongst their peers. It was unknown what Du Gui had said to Du Chong, but Du Chong's gaze was filled with a cold intent as he looked over from afar. Du Hao and Du Yan also immediately shot cold gazes over from afar. Those gazes clearly did not contain any goodwill. Du Xiaofu's gaze glanced at Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yan from afar. During those years, the ones who had snatched his monthly medicinal pills were these three people. The corners of Du Xiaofu's mouth slowly lifted into a mean arc immediately, a faint smile appeared on his face as he sighed and shook his head. After which, he slowly walked forward, wanting to find a better vantage point to watch the show. What is this fool doing here? It's better to stay away from this fool, so as to avoid being tainted by his foolish aura. When they saw Du Xiaofu walk over, the Du family members along the way looked as if they were avoiding the plague. Their expressions were indifferent as their gazes were filled with disdain and disgust. Basically, no one was willing to stand together with Du Xiaofu. The second master is here. At this moment, a group of Du family elders slowly walked over to the drill ground, immediately causing a commotion among the spectators around the drill ground. Greetings to the second master and the various elders. The crowd around the drill ground, including Du Chong, Du Hao, Du Yan, and the other young boys and girls, immediately bowed respectfully towards the group of Du family elders. No need for formalities. Among the group of Du family elders, a burly man with a sturdy figure waved his long sleeves as he looked at the surrounding younger generation of the Du family's branch and main branches. His gaze revealed a gratified and expectant look, but soon after, his gaze swept across the surrounding crowd. Finally, his gaze pierced through the crowd and landed on Du Xiaofu, who was standing alone in the middle of the drill ground. This time, second uncle is personally leading the way. Towards the burly man, Du Xiaofu's gaze softened a little. That was his own second uncle, Du Zhixiong. Since young, he had treated Du Xiaofu well and was also a famous expert in the entire Stone City. He had always used his ferocious style to intimidate many factions that were dissatisfied with the Du family. Du Zhixiong's gaze unexpectedly paused on Du Xiaofu for a while, but he did not say anything. Then, his gaze turned towards Du Hao, Du Chong, and the other eager young boys and girls. In a clear voice, he said, "When you brothers and sisters compete, do not overdo it. First, there will be an elimination round. When there are 12 people left, we will draw lots to determine your opponents. Do you all understand the rules of the competition?" "Understood." Hearing the burly man's question, each of the young boys and girls immediately responded in unison. At this moment, their gazes all landed on a long table not far away. On top of it, there were 2 brocade boxes and a baby-sized jade bottle. Their eyes were blazing, as if they already knew what was inside. The burly man nodded his head in satisfaction and continued, "This time, among the 3 of you who emerge victorious, the first place will be able to obtain the essence blood of the violent stone demon wolf to enter the foundation establishment stage. The second and third place will each obtain a foundation establishment pill. Those who perform well will also be rewarded at that time. Using the essence blood of the violent stone demon wolf to enter the foundation establishment stage, at that time, there is a possibility that you will be able to obtain the violent stone demon wolf's innate beast ability. This time, the Du family has really put in a lot of effort for these younger generation. Let's see who will be able to obtain the essence blood of the violent stone demon wolf to enter the foundation establishment stage." The blood within the neatly standing young boys and girls immediately began to boil. Regardless of whether it was the essence blood of the violent stone demon wolf or the foundation establishment pill, both were extremely tempting. The essence blood of the violent stone demon wolf, I must obtain it. Du Hao's hands slightly clenched into fists as a blazing light flashed across his eyes. The essence blood of the violent stone demon wolf to enter the foundation establishment stage was something that even the entire Du family could not easily support. Furthermore, the benefits in the future could be imagined. Therefore, this time, he must obtain the essence blood of the violent stone demon wolf to enter the Xiantian stage. It's really extremely tempting. Hearing those prizes, Du Xiaofu's heart began to beat faster. If it was in the past, it would not have mattered. However, now that he was able to cultivate, the significance was naturally different. Chapter 11. Translator, Atlas Studios. Du Zhixiong smiled faintly as he looked at the impatient juniors. Then, he announced loudly, "I now announce that the annual competition begins." Boom! As the burly man's voice fell, the entire field erupted. Hot blood surged within the bodies of the young boys and girls. Their profound energy surged, causing the surrounding air to fluctuate. All of a sudden, over 100 different colored profound chi exploded out in a dazzling manner. Figures swiftly flashed, and the young men and women immediately started to disperse, so as to avoid being defeated by a sneak attack from the surrounding people. In this kind of mixed elimination competition, everyone had their own camps, and it was extremely chaotic. Bang bang bang! However, the competition also began at the same time. Brother Du Hao, do your best. Du Shui, do your best. Looking at the battle that was about to break out, some of the young people on the drill ground cheered excitedly. They were all cheering at the top of their lungs for the people they liked. Ah, that fool didn't go up. I thought he also wanted to participate. How would that fool dare to go up? I'm afraid he's just here to watch the show. The surrounding Du family crowd noticed that Du Xiaofu did not go up. Their gazes became increasingly disdainful and disgusted. In the end, no one paid any more attention to Du Xiaofu. Their gazes fell on the fiery competition in the field. Du Zhixiong and the elders from the Du family had already retreated to the seats that had been prepared beforehand. A plain-clothed woman looked at the field, then said to the sturdy burly man beside her, "Second master, the overall strength of the younger generation this time is not bad." "It is not bad. There are a few from the branch families who are not weak either." Du Zhixiong's gaze was somewhat mixed as it fell on Du Xiaofu, who had not gone up. His gaze secretly wavered. Only when he heard the plain-clothed woman's words did he retract his gaze and look at the field. However, the branch families can't compare to the main family. An old man looked at the field and couldn't help but interrupt. Du Zhixiong smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. Everyone's gaze fell on the fiery arena. Even Du Xiaofu was watching with interest from within the crowd. Bang bang bang. The competition on the drill ground was getting more and more intense, and people were constantly being eliminated. Muffled sounds of fighting could be heard, accompanied by the exclamations and discussions of the Du family members from time to time. The scene was extremely heated. After a few rounds of intense sparring, in the end, just as the surrounding Du clan members had discussed, only Du Hao, Du Chong and Du Yen were left standing in the arena, causing countless gazes to look at them with envy. According to the rules, Du Hao will be first, Du Chong will be second, and Du Yen will be third. An elder from the Du family announced the results of this competition with a smile on his face. "I've said it before, the stony demon wolf's blood essence is mine." Du Hao revealed a proud smile and directly walked to the long table in front of the Du family elder. He directly took the palm-sized jade bottle that contained the stony demon wolf's blood essence into his hand. Du Chong and Du Yen also didn't fall behind, each of them grabbing the brocade box that contained the Foundation Establishment pill. Seeing the stony demon wolf's blood essence and Foundation Establishment pill fall into the hands of these three people, numerous envious gazes also fell on the three of them. "Good job, Brother Du Hao. Congratulations, Brother Du Hao, congratulations, Brother Du Chong." After the Du Hao trio received the stony demon wolf's blood essence and Foundation Establishment pill, they proudly walked down the drill ground. The crowd on the drill ground was in an uproar. Along the way, they were immediately surrounded and welcomed by numerous young boys and girls. Everywhere they passed, there were compliments and congratulations. Du Xiaofu's gaze looked at the Du Hao trio. His gaze moved, then he turned around and directly left. "Brother Hao, look, that fool ran away. That fool didn't even dare to go on stage from start to finish, and now he actually ran away. He's probably afraid of being beaten up. Did that fool already know that Brother Chong and Brother Hao are planning to cripple one of his hands, so he ran away? Ha 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 ha, he only knows to run, but he's not that stupid." The group of young boys and girls clustered behind the Du Hao trio discovered that Du Xiaofu had turned around and left, and immediately burst out into ridicule and ridicule. "Let that fool run away, he's lucky today. Let's go drink and celebrate, today's my treat." Du Chong and Du Hao originally planned to properly settle accounts with Du Xiaofu, but who knew that Du Xiaofu would actually directly run away? The three of them were obviously in a good mood today. After fiercely glaring at Du Xiaofu's back, they didn't plan to continue today. After all, there was still a long time to deal with a fool. "That's right, Brother Hao and Brother Chong are magnanimous, that fool is lucky today. Now we should properly celebrate. Congratulations to Brother Hao, Brother Chong, and Brother Yen for obtaining the clan's reward." The group of young boys and girls continued to crowd around the Du Hao trio like stars surrounding the moon as they left the drill ground, accompanied by various kinds of boasting, intending to properly celebrate. At the exit of the drill ground, there was a large iron gate, and just as Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yen were being respectfully surrounded by the stars surrounding the moon and walked to the gate of the drill ground, a figure suddenly walked out and directly blocked in front of the crowd. This was a purple-robed youth. His eyes were clear and bright, and there was a faint smile on his resolute face. "Hey, the fool is back. This fool is back to court death." Numerous gazes suddenly fell on the purple-robed youth, and many people's faces changed. The one who came was actually Du Xiaofu. When Du Chong, Du Hao, and Du Yen saw Du Xiaofu blocking the exit of the drill ground, they looked at each other in surprise, and then revealed a hint of understanding in their eyes. Du Xiaofu completely ignored the surrounding ridicule and only looked at the Du Hao trio in the front, a smile in his clear eyes as he indifferently said, "Robbery." The two indifferent words were extremely resounding, causing the crowd to abruptly quieten down. Numerous astonished gazes immediately fell on Du Xiaofu, and all of them thought that they had misheard. In just a breath's time, the group of young boys and girls burst into roaring laughter, as if they had heard the funniest thing in the world. Some of the young boys and girls laughed until they bent over, and some of the young girls laughed until they trembled. "Ha ha ha. Did you hear that? This fool said he wants to rob. Rob Brother Hao and Brother Chong. This fool is tired of living. Did I hear wrongly? We are the ones who rob him every time. This fool must be getting more and more foolish. Why do I feel that this fool is becoming more and more adorable? You, what did you say? You want to rob us? We didn't hear wrongly, did we?" Huh. Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yen also laughed until tears almost flowed out. Chapter 12. Robbery. There was a slight smile on Du Xiaofu's serious face. Hand seals were formed one after another, and there seemed to be countless energy fluctuations of heaven and earth in the surroundings. These hand seals brought along an endless stream of energy and poured it into Du Xiaofu's body. Waves of profound energy rapidly flowed through a few specific meridians and profound orifices in his body in one go. Finally, they gathered around his palm, causing the surrounding space to fluctuate like a boiling water surface. At this moment, the aura on Du Xiaofu's body suddenly became frighteningly fierce, like a fierce beast awakening from its slumber. At this moment, Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yan's eyes were the first to be filled with shock. Stormy Wave's palm. Du Xiaofu struck out with his palm. Profound energy surged, and an explosive sound like muffled thunder suddenly rang out. Immediately after, where the palm passed, waves of energy waves visible to the naked eye spread out. Waves of energy waves like the stormy wave's palm unceasingly collided with the three youths led by Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yen. Puchi! 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 Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yen, who bore the brunt of the attack, did not even have time to prepare. A mouthful of blood spurted out from their mouths, and their bodies were heavily blown away. The three of them fell to the ground a few meters away. Blood overflowed, and their faces were pale. They struggled a few times, but were unable to get up. Rumble. Muffled sounds continued to reverberate. The youths behind Du Hao, who were bent over from laughing, and the young ladies who were trembling with laughter, were blown away by the stormy waves like wind. Their figures were like stones that were thrown out. Carrying the mocking laughter that had not been restrained in time, they finally fiercely fell to the ground. They fell in a mess, and were in a complete mess. At this moment, it was as if everyone's mocking laughter had been fiercely smashed away. Everything calmed down, and the area around the gate of the drill ground was a mess. This sudden commotion had already attracted the attention of all the Du family members in the drill ground. One by one, they stared at the entrance of the drill ground. All of them were stupefied, and their jaws hung open for a long time. Du Xiaofu's expression did not change much as he directly walked in front of Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yen. Under the stunned gazes of the surrounding people, he extended his hand and took out the brocade box containing the Foundation establishment pills and the jade bottle containing the violent stone demon wolf's essence blood from their robes. He very naturally stuffed them into his robes. I'll give you 3 days to return the pills you stole from me. Otherwise, I'll steal from you every time I see you in the future. I'm serious. As soon as he finished speaking, Du Xiaofu patted his butt and walked away. Only a short distance away from the drill ground, the Du family members looked as if they had seen a ghost. When Du Xiaofu's silhouette completely disappeared from everyone's shocked gazes, the people around the drill ground finally realized that Du Xiaofu, who had just been ridiculed by others, had robbed the top 3 of his peers in front of everyone's eyes. Top 3 among the same generation. Then, everyone in the drill ground looked at Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yu, who were unable to even crawl up. Their gazes were very meaningful. Those who had just mocked and disliked Du Xiaofu, when they thought of their previous ridicule, couldn't help but feel their faces burning, as if they had been ruthlessly slapped in the face. Dusk. The sun was setting in the west. The evening glow was speckled, and the light and shadow were mottled. Second brother, there hasn't been any special movements from those families recently, right? In a courtyard of the Du family, a handsome man in his 40s sat upright and asked Du Zhixiong. Du Zhixiong shook his head and said, there hasn't been any big movements from those families recently. However, something interesting happened in the family today. I don't know if Big Brother is interested to hear about it. Oh, it should be a competition between the younger generation today. Could it be that among those little guys, there's someone who performed well? The burly man's interest was immediately piqued. As the head of the Du family, he valued the younger generation of the Du family very much. This person was the head of the Du family, Du Jinwu, a famous existence in the entire Stone City. The smile on Du Zhixiong's face was somewhat complicated, as if he simply didn't know what to say. Then, he said, those little guys are not bad. However, the interesting one is the third brother's son, Xiaofu. Xiaofu, hearing this, Du Jinwu slightly sighed. On his handsome face, there was some regret and complexity in his bright eyes. Then, he looked at the sturdy man and said, could it be that his illness is serious again? He is quite pitiful. If there is an opportunity, even if I have to pay a big price, I would like to invite a talisman master to take a look at him. Big brother, I don't think there is a need. Du Zhixiong's eyes moved, and then he said to Du Jinwu, today, in the competition between those little guys, Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yan took the top 3 places, but what? Second brother, when did you start to stutter like this? Du Jinwu looked at Du Zhixiong. This stuttering appearance was not like his second brother's usual personality. Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yan obtained the essence blood of the violent stone demon wolf and the foundation establishment pill. However, as soon as they left the drill ground, they were snatched away by Xiaofu. Du Zhixiong looked at Du Jinwu and suppressed his unsettled heart for a long time. He took a deep breath and said, with only one move, Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yan were sent flying. The other juniors were also injured. Xiaofu used the Stormy Wave's palm. Stormy Wave's palm. Second brother, you are not joking. Du Jinwu suddenly stood up. His face was frozen. He looked straight at Du Zhixiong, with a sharp light in his eyes. Du Zhixiong nodded seriously and said, with only one move, the Stormy Wave's palm, I saw it with my own eyes. Quickly find Xiaofu. I want to see him. I want to see him immediately. Du Jinwu's gaze trembled. That frozen face of his immediately revealed a smile. Following the end of the annual competition between the younger generation of the Du family, the final result made the entire Du family flabbergasted. Du Hao, Du Chong, and Du Yan were the top 3 of the younger generation. The 3 strongest members of the Du family's younger generation. In the end, they were defeated by Du Xiaofu, who everyone thought was a fool. Was this foolish young master still a fool? The entire Du family was shocked. This news even spread to all the forces in the Stone City in a very short period of time. Of course, at this moment, Du Xiaofu naturally did not know that many forces in the Stone City were already alarmed because of him. I still don't have a cultivation method. What should I do with these things? Deep into the night, in the room, Du Xiaofu looked at the jade bottle and 2 brocade boxes that he had robbed from the others. Facing the violent stone demon wolf's essence blood and 2 foundation establishment pills, he revealed a difficult expression. If other people saw these, they would probably be wild with joy. It was enough to allow their cultivation to advance a step further. However, Du Xiaofu knew that he was different. These were all good things. However, he still hadn't practiced any cultivation technique, and the profound qi in his body had also reached the point of being full. Whether it was the violent stone demon wolf's blood essence baptism or the building foundation Dan, he couldn't use them right now. No, I must get the purple qi Chaoyang scripture as soon as possible. Du Xiaofu secretly made up his mind. The most important thing now was to cultivate a cultivation method. His goal was naturally the purple qi Chaoyang scripture, which was currently the strongest in the Du family. Chapter 13. Let's go find Fuibai. Du Xiaofu's brows twitched. He had to cultivate his cultivation technique as soon as possible. After stuffing the jade bottle and the 2 brocade boxes into his clothes, Du Xiaofu decided to find Fuibai overnight to see if that old man knew where the violet qi Chaoyang scripture was. After leaving the room, Du Xiaofu headed straight for the martial repository. The Du family had guards and experts, but Du Xiaofu was still able to easily bypass many courtyards in the night and arrived at the martial repository. Why can I still hear the flute sound here? Where is it coming from? Just as he arrived outside the martial repository, Du Xiaofu could faintly hear the flute sound that he had been hearing recently. The flute sound was like a gurgling stream, but it was also as clear and cheerful as a pure stream. As the tune changed, it suddenly became melancholic, as if a young girl was pouring out her heart and longing for her lover. The flute sound seemed to be getting more and more melancholic and louder, as if it was coming from afar. Although the faint flute sound was rather strange, Du Xiaofu did not pay too much attention to it and directly entered the martial repository. Fuibai had always been staying in the room behind the first floor of the martial repository, but Du Xiaofu rarely went there. Du Xiaofu entered Fuibai's room. The room was very clean, as there were not many things, so it was not messy at all. However, there was no sign of Fuibai either. Where did he run off to in the middle of the night? The room was not big and could be seen with a single glance. There was no sign of Fuibai in the room. There seemed to be a fluctuation behind him. Du Xiaofu immediately turned around and said, "Old Bai, where did you go just now?" Before Du Xiaofu could finish his words, his face froze when he turned around. The person behind him was not Fuibai, but a woman. A very beautiful woman who looked to be in her 40s. She wore a plain long dress with light blue ribbons fluttering in the wind. She looked extremely pure and elegant, as if she had a natural noble aura that made people feel reverence in their hearts. "Who are you?" After being stunned for a while, Du Xiaofu immediately became vigilant. This beautiful woman was not a member of the Du family, and the martial scripture tower was a restricted area of the Du family. For an unfamiliar woman to appear in the Du family's restricted area in the middle of the night, Du Xiaofu had no choice but to be vigilant. "Who are you to Fuibai?" The plain-clothed woman's clothes were extremely ordinary, but she gave off an innate air of nobility. When her clear and cold voice entered Du Xiaofu's ears, it was as if Du Xiaofu was unable to refuse. He immediately replied, "I'm Fuibai's big friend." Du Xiaofu originally wanted to call him Big Brother Fuibai, but he had promised Fuibai that he would give him face in front of others. Therefore, he immediately changed the way he addressed Fuibai as a friend. "Are you his friend?" The plain-clothed woman looked at Du Xiaofu, and her gaze wavered slightly. Then, her dark eyelashes fluttered, and her bright eyes were elegant. She looked around with the smoke, and a ripple appeared in her eyes. She sighed, "He is indeed capable of doing such a thing." "Big sister, are you old Bai's friend?" Du Xiaofu asked. From the tone of the plain-clothed woman, she seemed to know Fuibai. However, it was strange that Fuibai knew someone with such a temperament. He had never heard Fuibai mention the existence of this plain-clothed woman, nor had he heard Fuibai mention anyone else besides himself. The plain-clothed woman didn't pay any attention to Du Xiaofu. Her eyes were like water as she swept a glance at Fuibai's room. After that, she raised her lips and said, "Since you're related to him and he's avoiding me, I can only bring you away." As her voice rang out, Du Xiaofu didn't even see the plain-clothed woman make any movements. Suddenly, the space around him seemed to have frozen, and he couldn't move at all. Even the profound energy in his meridians froze. After that, a slender hand landed on his shoulder. Eh! When the hand landed on Du Xiaofu's shoulder, a trace of surprise flashed through the plain-clothed woman's eyes. But soon after, her figure flashed and disappeared from the room. The bright moon spiraled in the sky with specks of starlight. In the air, Du Xiaofu's shoulder was grabbed by the plain-clothed woman. Clearly, her slender hand was powerless, but his body was involuntarily brought into the air. He quickly streaked across the vast buildings in the stone city and finally appeared in a mountain range that stretched as far as the eye could see. The winding mountain range stretched as far as the eye could see. Under the moonlight, there was also a boundless sea of trees. Expert, an absolute expert. In the air, Du Xiaofu's face was in pain from being scraped by the wind, but he couldn't help having a shocked expression. Floating in the air. Even his big uncle and second uncle didn't seem to be able to do that. Only the experts in the legends could have such enviable strength and methods. Within the sea of trees, there was a mountain peak that rose 1,000 feet from the ground. Dangerous peaks stood erect and strange rocks were everywhere. A huge cliff stood erect and pierced straight into the middle of the mountain. It was like an azure dragon raising its head. The plain-clothed woman brought Du Xiaofu and landed on the peak of the mountain. She also casually let go of Du Xiaofu. However, her slender hand tapped Du Xiaofu's chest. Du Xiaofu involuntarily opened his mouth and a pellet-like object shot into his throat. In the end, it involuntarily fell into his stomach. "Say, Senior, what did you give me to eat?" Du Xiaofu's complexion greatly changed. He wanted to use his hand to pull out the pellet that was shot into his throat, but even when he pulled out his tears, the pellet didn't have the slightest reaction. It was as if it had already melted into his stomach. The beautiful woman in plain clothes paid no attention to Du Xiaofu in the slightest. She took a few light steps forward and sat down cross-legged on a clean rock. Her beautiful eyes gazed at the boundless mountains in the distance, and it was unknown what she was thinking about. "Senior, I actually don't have any relationship with that old man Fui Bai. If you have a grudge with him, I'm afraid you've caught the wrong person." Du Xiaofu originally thought that this beautiful woman was Fui Bai's friend or something. However, from the looks of it, this beautiful woman definitely had a deep grudge with Fui Bai. He had already silently cursed Fui Bai's entire family in his heart. He had truly suffered an undeserved calamity. The beautiful woman turned her head and looked at Du Xiaofu. "If you don't have any relationship with him, then there's no point in keeping you alive. I'll kill you right now." The cold voice caused Du Xiaofu's heart to tremble when he heard it. His expression immediately changed as he said, "Senior, there is nothing between me and old Bai. However, we are friends who have gone through life and death situations together. We once shared a bed and wore the same pants. As long as you don't think of running away, you will still be alive. However, if Fui Bai doesn't come to save you, then it's hard to guarantee that." The beautiful woman said to Du Xiaofu. "Old Bai will definitely come. This place should be very far from the stone city. If Old Bai comes, I'm afraid it will take at least 10 days to half a month. Let's wait a little longer. Old Bai will definitely come back," Du Xiaofu said to the beautiful woman with certainty. However, he was already crying in his heart. The surroundings should be the barbaric beast mountain range outside the stone city. It was rumored that this was the world of demonic beasts. Not to mention whether Fui Bai would come to the barbaric beast mountain range. Even if he did, that old man who only knew how to dig out birds' nests wouldn't be able to save him from this beautiful woman with a powerful cultivation. The beautiful woman glanced at Du Xiaofu. In the end, she did not say anything. Her long sleeves shook, and an ancient flute appeared in her delicate hand. She opened her mouth slightly, and the sound of the flute immediately sounded like the sound of nature. Chapter 14. so she was the one who played it. As the sound of the flute entered Du Xiaofu's ears, it immediately caused Du Xiaofu to be startled. So the flute sounds he had been hearing for the past few days were actually played by this beautiful woman. As the flute sound entered his ears, it was as if his soul had been awakened. At first, the sound was still light, like the gurgling of a mountain stream, but soon after, it began to gradually intensify, like the dense drizzle of early spring. The sound of the flute had an extremely strange attraction, causing Du Xiaofu to be unable to help but listen carefully. The melodious sound of the flute, which was like the sound of nature, seemed to hover above his head. It was clear and gentle, as if it was narrating the thoughts of a young girl. It was gentle and warm, and the tone of the sound gradually changed. Within the gentleness, it instantly carried a trace of hidden bitterness. Du Xiaofu was intoxicated by the flute sound. This was definitely the most beautiful sound he had ever heard in his life, causing him to be unable to stop even if he wanted to. When Du Xiaofu woke up, the bright moon had moved to the west, and it should be almost dawn. What a strange flute sound. Du Xiaofu patted his own cheeks. He had actually been vaguely intoxicated by the flute sound, as if he had lost consciousness. Looking around, the beautiful woman was currently sitting cross-legged on the green rock, her eyes tightly shut. Roar roar. Ao ao. From the depths of the mountain range, astonishing beast roars could be heard from time to time, as if countless ferocious beasts were stirring restlessly. Could she have fallen asleep? Du Xiaofu looked at the beautiful woman sitting cross-legged with her eyes tightly shut. He did not know where that old man Fui Bai was at this time. Even if he came, what use would he be in front of this expert? First, run for your life. His clear eyes rippled as Du Xiaofu made up his mind. After all, his life was more important, and it was better to run for his life first. Immediately, he tiptoed down the mountain under the moonlight. The mountain peak was extremely tall, like a dragon raising its head. If not for the fact that Du Xiaofu had profound qi in his body, he would not have been able to climb down this mountain peak. But when Du Xiaofu went down the mountain, he was still exhausted and lost his life. Roar! From time to time, the roars of beasts could be heard from the dense forest, causing Du Xiaofu's heart to tremble. This was the Savage Beast Mountain Range, not an ordinary place. It was possible to encounter a demonic beast at any time. Therefore, even though he had escaped down the mountain, Du Xiaofu did not dare to relax at all. We can't go in the direction of Stone City. Du Xiaofu was about to run in the direction of Stone City, but he immediately thought that if the woman realized he was running away, she would definitely chase after him in the direction of Stone City. Therefore, if he continued to flee in the direction of the Stone City, with the beautiful woman's ability to fly, it would be easy for her to capture him. However, Du Xiaofu had some misgivings about going deeper into the Barbaric Beast Mountain Range. It was said that the deeper one went into the Barbaric Beast Mountain Range, the more monstrous beasts one would encounter, and the stronger the monstrous beasts would be. It was said that the monstrous beasts that lived in the depths of the Barbaric Beast Mountain Range were existences that even the strongest cultivators did not dare to rashly touch. Only in danger can there be a chance of survival. Du Xiaofu knew that he did not have much time to think about it, nor could he wait to be caught again. He could only take a gamble and hide in the Barbaric Beast Mountain Range for a while. At most, he could just go back when the time came. Stone City, Du family. In a courtyard, the lights were brightly lit and the atmosphere was tense. Big brother, we've searched everywhere, but there are no traces of Xiaofu. Someone saw someone flying over our Du family, and Xiaofu's disappearance, I'm worried. In the hall, Du Zhixiong's face was tense and solemn. After searching the entire Du family, he could not find Xiaofu's shadow, so he could not help but worry about all kinds of possibilities. Flying in the air requires at least the pulse spirit realm. In the entire Stone City, there doesn't seem to be anyone at that level. Du Jinwu's face was also solemn. If Xiaofu's disappearance was related to someone at the pulse spirit realm, then it would really be a troublesome matter. Du Zhixiong suddenly raised his head and said to Du Jinwu, Big brother, flying in the air is not something that needs to be at the pulse spirit realm. Some special pulse spirit realm experts can do it. It's just that we still don't know where Xiaofu is or which faction is targeting our Du family. The news of Xiaofu's recovery should have spread out a long time ago. The potential that Xiaofu has shown today has already made some factions uneasy. It has affected the gathering of the 5 great clans in 3 months, so they can't help but start to make a move. Investigate, we must investigate thoroughly. Once we find out who it is, I will not let them go. Du Junwu was clearly angry. His eyes flashed with anger and coldness. Then, his eyes moved slightly, as if he had thought of something. He said to Du Zhixiong, remember to inform third brother. You must inform him about this. Yes. I will arrange everything at the same time. I will find Xiaofu as soon as possible. Du Zhixiong nodded and left in a hurry. The mountain range stretched on endlessly, and the sea of forests connected together. Some of the ancient trees were very astonishing, as they covered the sky and covered the sun. There were also some vines that had grown for who knows how many years, entwining around the trees, causing the trees to be so large that several adults would not be able to wrap their arms around them. Du Xiaofu did not dare to stop in the vast forest. He ran as fast as he could, thinking that it would be best to get as far away from that woman as possible. Roar, roar. In the depths of the mountain range, the roars of beasts constantly rang out. The sound waves grew louder, and even more so. It was as if all the beasts in the surrounding mountain range were rioting. The numerous beast roars caused Du Xiaofu's heart to involuntarily palpitate. If he were to encounter a formidable demonic beast, the consequences could be imagined. Du Xiaofu did not know how long he had run for, but dawn finally arrived. The roars from the depths of the mountain range strangely gradually calmed down when dawn arrived. PFFF, however, at this moment, Du Xiaofu wanted to rest for a while, but he suddenly felt the profound energy in his body surge, as if it was about to explode. The profound energy in his meridians surged endlessly. He felt a sweet taste in his throat, and a mouthful of blood was directly spat out. His entire body went limp, and he immediately staggered a few steps back, about to fall to the ground. After running for an entire night, you can't run anymore? As the cold voice sounded, a figure appeared beside Du Xiaofu like a ghost. Her delicate hand pointed a few times, and several extremely gentle and mysterious forces fell into several acupuncture points in Du Xiaofu's body. As these gentle forces fell into Du Xiaofu's acupuncture points, they surged into Du Xiaofu's meridians as if they were alive, and slowly suppressed the surging profound energy that was about to explode. Bang! At the same time, Du Xiaofu also fell to the ground with his 4 feet in the air. The figure of the plain-clothed beauty also appeared in Du Xiaofu's line of sight. You're a little smart. You actually didn't run back and knew to do the opposite. But you think too highly of yourself. There aren't many people in this world who can escape from me, let alone a brat like you who only has Xian Qi but no cultivation. The plain-clothed beauty looked at Du Xiaofu, who had fallen to the ground, and a hint of a smile flashed across her eyes. This was the first time she looked at Du Xiaofu so seriously. She said softly, "You're fine now. You ate my poison pill, and that's what happened just now. You can continue to run and try." The plain-clothed beauty's voice sounded, and she moved with light steps, heading directly into the depths of the mountain range. The cold voice from her mouth continued, "The savage beast mountain range seems to be a little abnormal recently. I plan to go and take a look. You'd better follow closely by my side, or else you'll lose your little life if you randomly encounter a demonic beast." Chapter 15. So what you fed me last night was a poison pill. What a beautiful woman with a heart as venomous as a scorpion. I have no enmity with you. Hey, wait for me. Since he had eaten the poison pill, there was no way he could escape. His life was in the hands of others at any time. Du Xiaofu couldn't care less as he cursed under his breath. However, when he saw the silhouette of the beautiful woman leaving, he had no choice but to crawl up and follow her. In the quiet mountain range, the beautiful woman in plain clothes walked at a steady pace. Du Xiaofu followed behind her while his gaze was extremely vicious all along the way, and he gnashed his teeth with hatred towards the beautiful woman. However, he was clearly aware in his heart that with his current strength, it was utterly impossible for him to be a match for the beautiful woman even if he possessed that mysterious move. "Fui Bai, I'll settle the score with you when I get back." Du Xiaofu had no choice but to be wary of his surroundings. If a demonic beast suddenly appeared, it wouldn't be a good thing. And all of this, Du Xiaofu naturally placed all the blame on Fui Bai. He didn't know how Fui Bai had provoked the beautiful woman in plain clothes, but it wasn't a simple matter. Swish! Suddenly, above a towering tree, a stream of light flashed down towards Du Xiaofu like a bolt of lightning. Oscillating fist. Du Xiaofu discovered it. While his face was filled with shock, he quickly formed hand seals. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist as the oscillating fist blasted out, causing an astonishing aura to erupt. Bang! A low muffled sound rang out as an astonishing 13 layers of energy waves overlapped like a shockwave. In the end, it ruthlessly landed on the streak of light that shot down like lightning. The streak of light turned sluggish and fell to the ground. It was actually a patterned white snake that was at least 5 feet long. After falling to the ground, its body twitched for a while before it could no longer crawl. Swish swish. Another sound of wind breaking rang out as a total of 5 lightning-like streaks of light shot towards Du Xiaofu from above, arriving behind Du Xiaofu in an instant. Chi la la. The space was distorted, and then there was a fluctuation. It was as if a light blade had cut through the space. The 5 lightning-like lights were cut into 10 pieces at the same time and fell around Du Xiaofu. They were 5 more patterned white snakes. White lightning demonic snake. Looking at the patterned white snake on the ground, Du Xiaofu was no stranger to it. The Du family had a lot of information on all kinds of demonic beasts, especially the demonic beasts that often roamed the edges of the Savage Beast mountain range. Generally speaking, the white lightning demonic beasts were only at the Hotian realm. They couldn't grow very high and were only low-level demonic beasts. It was said that this kind of white lightning demonic snake was not poisonous, but it was extremely fast. Once it bit a person, it would release a kind of electric light that would make the person's xian qi useless and their entire body weak. Thinking about the sudden scene just now, Du Xiaofu was still a little scared even though he had just blasted down a white lightning demonic snake. After all, it was the first time he had faced a demonic beast head-on. Your reaction is not bad. Even without cultivation, you are still able to deal with a white lightning demonic snake. However, you almost lost your life just now. The white-clothed beautiful woman quietly looked at Du Xiaofu from the front, and then continued to walk forward. Du Xiaofu didn't know what to say. He was indeed a little nervous just now. If he encountered this kind of situation again, he was afraid that his life would be lost because of his nervousness. Looking at the white lightning demonic snake on the ground that was unable to move because of his oscillating fist, Du Xiaofu's eyes slightly moved. He went up and fiercely punched again. After making sure that the white lightning demonic snake was dead, he followed the white-clothed beautiful woman. On the way, he couldn't help but be more vigilant. However, it was obviously impossible to completely avoid the demonic beasts in the Savage Beast mountain range. In just one morning, Du Xiaofu followed the white-clothed beautiful woman and encountered several demonic beasts' attacks. What made Du Xiaofu the most strange was that those demonic beasts seemed to have grown eyes. They never attacked the beautiful woman first, as if they were targeting him. Fortunately, the demonic beasts that they encountered were at the Hotian level. Although they looked very frightening, Du Xiaofu was still able to barely cope with them. After encountering several demonic beasts' attacks in succession, Du Xiaofu's reaction and response had improved a lot. Even the white-clothed beautiful woman would sometimes take a second look at him. Stormy waves palm. In the dense forest, Du Xiaofu lightly shouted. 3 hand seals condensed, and waves of xian qi surged in the palm of his hand. In one breath, the aura on his body suddenly became fierce and frightening. It was like a fierce beast that had awakened from a deep slumber. The surrounding space was like a boiling water surface, and unceasingly fluctuated. A palm print immediately fell on a yellow demonic beast that was about 3 meters long and half a meter tall. It was covered in scales. Bang! Wherever the palm print passed, waves of force waves that could be seen with the naked eye spread out. In the end, it fell on the back of the scaled demonic beast. A thunderous explosion suddenly sounded out, accompanied by waves of force waves that continuously collided with the scaled demonic beast. Ayo! The scaled demonic beast seemed to be in extreme pain. It roared from its mouth and continuously retreated. A pair of bloody eyes fiercely stared at Du Xiaofu. Ayo ayo! Suddenly, the roars of many demonic beasts came from the depths of the mountain range. It seemed that there were many fierce birds and beasts roaring. Ayo! The scaled demonic beast roared from its mouth and fiercely stared at Du Xiaofu with its bloody eyes. Then, it quickly drilled into a half-meter wide, bottomless rock cave not far away. It seemed that the numerous demonic beasts' roars had made it afraid. What a powerful demonic beast! It is worthy of being called a demonic beast that has reached the edge of the Xiantian layer. Looking at the fleeing demonic beast, Du Xiaofu was somewhat exhausted. His palm was a little numb from the shock. He had just used the stormy wave's palm and had consumed a lot of Xian Qi. As a Xiantian martial skill, the stormy wave's palm was Du Xiaofu's strongest move, except for the mysterious move. However, in the end, not only did it not injure the demonic beast that had reached the edge of the Xiantian realm, but it also caused his palm to be numb. This made Du Xiaofu gnash his teeth. If he could have perfected the stormy wave's palm and increased its power, perhaps he could have really hurt the demonic beast just now. A person with Xian Qi and no realm can actually practice a Xiantian martial skill. He is really a freak. The white-clothed beautiful woman had no intention of intervening just now. She didn't even look at the demonic beast when it ran away. Instead, she seemed to be more and more curious about Du Xiaofu. Originally, she didn't even look at Du Xiaofu, but now, she was surprised by Du Xiaofu several times. Where are we going? Du Xiaofu was very unhappy with the white-clothed beautiful woman, but there was no other way. Every time they encountered a demonic beast, if it wasn't a moment of life and death, the white-clothed beautiful woman would never intervene. Even 4 hours ago, Du Xiaofu's calf was scratched by a demonic beast, leaving several deep scratches and bleeding, but the white-clothed beautiful woman didn't have any intention of intervening. Du Xiaofu could only endure all the dissatisfaction. After all, he couldn't defeat the other party. However, along the way, Du Xiaofu found that he had improved a lot in dealing with demonic beasts. Without a doubt, this kind of training was very beneficial to him. It's getting more and more lively here. It seems that some people have been attracted. They must be looking for something. The white-clothed beautiful woman still didn't pay attention to Du Xiaofu's words. She looked at the depths of the mountain range and quietly listened to the shocking roars of demonic beasts. Then, she turned to Du Xiaofu and said, "Wait for me here. I'll go ahead and take a look." Thank you to Qingzhu 824 for tipping 588 Chasing Waves coins. Thank you to Kayun Zenon 0413 for tipping 100 Chasing Waves coins. Chapter 16. Whoosh! As her cold voice faded, the silhouette of the plain-clothed woman swept out, disappearing before Du Xiaofu's eyes in the blink of an eye. Don't you know how to fly? Just carry me and fly. Why do you have to do this? Facing the plain-clothed woman, Du Xiaofu was speechless. He really didn't dare to wander around. Putting aside the fact that he had consumed the poison pill, after encountering the demonic beasts today, Du Xiaofu had a new understanding of the situation within the Barbarian Beast Mountain Range. This should still be the edge of the Barbarian Beast Mountain Range, but it was already so dangerous. One could only imagine how dangerous the interior of the Barbarian Beast Mountain Range was. Rustle, 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 rustle. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu seemed to have heard something, and his gaze also turned towards the shrubbery to the side. Ayo, ayo. The shrubbery to the side shook, causing the roars of beasts to ring out from behind. Under Du Xiaofu's nervous gaze, 5 3-foot-tall beasts suddenly charged out from the shrubbery. Rumble. The 5 beasts charged out, causing the ground to shake as well. Accompanied by a ferocious aura, they swept towards Du Xiaofu. The 3 big fellows were pitch black like ink, and their manes stood erect. Their bodies were almost 3 meters long, and there were 2 long tusks on their noses that were like ivory. The tusks emitted a bright light, and it caused people who looked at them to feel a chill in their hearts. 5 demonic mountain pangolin pigs. Du Xiaofu's face abruptly changed. The demonic mountain pangolin pig was definitely a Xiantian-level demonic beast. An adult demonic mountain pangolin pig was directly at the Xiantian level, not the least bit weaker than the iron-armored beast from before. Du Xiaofu already felt that he couldn't handle a single iron-armored beast. At this moment, 5 demonic mountain pangolin pigs were charging towards him. One could well imagine Du Xiaofu's mood. The leading demonic mountain pangolin pig was already not far from him. Stormy Wave's palm. Right at the same time that the first demon pangolin boar dashed over, young Master Du didn't have the time to hesitate at all. He utilized the Stormy Wave palm once more and instantly slapped it onto the demon pangolin boar's body. At the same time, a strand of light surged on the demon pangolin boar, and it was demon beast profound energy surging out as well. Bang! The demonic mountain pangolin boar was sent flying by Du Xiaofu's Stormy Wave palm, and Du Xiaofu wasn't much better off. Not long ago, when he was dealing with the iron-armored beast, he didn't have much strength left. At this moment, after being hit by the demonic mountain pangolin boar, which was known for its tyrannical strength, his body was sent flying. He fell heavily to the ground, and the corner of his mouth overflowed with blood. Bang! The demonic mountain pangolin pig that had been sent flying by Du Xiaofu fell to the ground and an ear-piercing cry of pain came from its mouth. However, it immediately stood up. Bang! Ao ao! The other 4 demonic mountain pangolin boars opened their bloody mouths at the same time. Their fangs shone with a cold light as they roared and pounced towards Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's current situation wasn't good. His face was pale, and he didn't have much strength left. He didn't know how to deal with 1 demonic mountain pangolin boar, let alone 4 of them. Swish 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 swish. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, the sound of wind breaking resounded. Several streaks of light swept over like lightning, as if they had eyes. They almost simultaneously entered the glabella of the 4 demonic mountain pangolin boars. The 4 demonic mountain pangolin boars fell to the ground, and didn't even have time to let out a scream. Swish! Almost at the same time, another streak of light entered the glabella of the demonic mountain pangolin boar that had just been sent flying by Du Xiaofu and was roaring as it pounced forward again. It also directly fell to the ground. The sudden change made Du Xiaofu heave a sigh of relief. The white-clothed beauty should have returned. But when his gaze fell on the corpses of the 5 demonic mountain pangolin boars, Du Xiaofu's expression began to change. Sharp arrows were stuck in the glabella of the 5 demonic mountain pangolin boars. There were special arrow feathers hanging from the heads, and they should be specially made sharp arrows. 5 sharp arrows directly killed 5 Xiantian realm demonic mountain pangolin boars. It was clean and efficient, and as fast as lightning. This wasn't the white-clothed beauty's style. Chi! As the 5 demonic mountain pangolin boars fell to the ground, Du Xiaofu was shocked. At the same time, a beautiful figure leaped out from the depths of the forest. It was a girl wearing tight green clothes. She shouldn't be too old, about 16 or 17 years old. Her eyebrows were like emerald feathers, and her skin was as white as snow. Her fine black hair was tied into a simple jade luo bun. She held an exquisite bow and arrow in her hand. She had a delicate face and a tall figure. Her entire person emitted a faint aura that made people think of elves. This girl was just like an elf. The girl appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. She only glanced at Du Xiaofu indifferently. Her watery eyes seemed amiable, but in reality, it gave people a feeling of being thousands of miles away. It made people not dare to look at her directly or approach her. Especially when her gaze seemed to be able to see through everything. The green-clothed girl then took out a dagger from her bosom and squatted beside the demonic mountain pangolin boar. She cut off the ivory tusks in the demonic mountain pangolin boar's mouth. Her fingers were slender, and her skin was like cream. There was a hint of pink in her snow-white skin. The dagger was incomparably sharp. It cut across the hard body of the demonic mountain pangolin boar as if it was cutting tofu. Every movement of the girl was like a dance. Her hair fluttered in the wind, her waist was slender, and her limbs were slender. She was elegant and refined. After a moment, the girl cut off the tusks in the mouths of the 5 demonic mountain pangolin boars. Finally, she stood up and looked at Du Xiaofu, who had already crawled up from the ground. She frowned and said, "You dare to enter the barbaric beast mountain range with just this bit of strength? If you don't want to die, then leave early. This is not a place you can enter recently." Her voice was clear and delicate, and her tone was slightly cold. As her voice faded, Du Xiaofu's vision blurred, and the girl had already disappeared. Such fast speed, such powerful strength. Du Xiaofu's tongue licked the trace of blood that flowed out from the corner of his mouth. It tasted slightly fishy. Even though this girl looked young, she was extremely powerful. She had easily killed the demonic mountain pangolin boars as if they were nothing. This was definitely not something an ordinary person could do. "Looks like your luck is pretty good. You haven't died yet." As her cold words faded, the plain-clothed woman finally returned. Her figure silently appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. "I almost died." Du Xiaofu felt wronged. Perhaps it was more appropriate to say that he was sullen. If that girl had not appeared in time, he would have really lost his life. Interesting, it's getting more and more interesting. I never imagined that someone from that clan would also come. Her talent is not low. There should be someone following her. Otherwise, they would not allow someone with such talent to casually enter the barbaric beast mountain range. The plain-clothed woman completely ignored Du Xiaofu. Instead, she looked at the direction that the green-clothed girl left and muttered, "It's getting more and more lively. Since we've met, it must be fate. It's good to go take a look. Boy, how about I bring you to take a look? Are you not interested?" Only then did the plain-clothed woman turn her head, and her gaze indifferently landed on Du Xiaofu's body. "Senior, big sis, I'm not interested in liveliness. You're an expert, so you don't need to eat. But I haven't eaten for almost a day and a night. Goo goo." Before Du Xiaofu's voice even faded, his stomach made gurgling noises. It was obvious that he was hungry. After martial cultivators reached a certain level, it was normal for them to not eat for 10 days to half a month. It was rumored that after reaching a certain level, martial cultivators could use profound aura to nourish their bodies. They could do it even without eating. However, no matter if it was the first or the second, with Du Xiaofu's current state, it was impossible for him to do it. The plain-clothed woman seemed to have truly forgotten about that. She glanced at Du Xiaofu and said, "You can go find something to eat right now." Chapter 17. Moments later, the aroma of meat filled the air, whetting everyone's appetite. A bonfire was set up in front of Du Xiaofu, roasting 2 pig trotters cut off from the demonic mountain pangolin. They were sprinkled with natural fragrant leaves and seasonings found in the forest. The oil sizzled incessantly, and the aroma of the meat was enough to make anyone drool. Smelling the aroma of the meat, even the plain-clothed beauty nearby couldn't help but cast a few glances over. Du Xiaofu was no stranger to this kind of roasted meat. He had secretly roasted it with Fui Bai many times over the years. Du Xiaofu had learned the art of roasting meat from Fui Bai. Every time he ate roasted meat, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but admit that Fui Bai's culinary skills were truly excellent. He was many times better than the chefs in the Du family. Du Xiaofu's stomach was already growling from hunger. He couldn't care less about his image. When the aroma of the meat reached its peak, he immediately started chewing. "Did Fui Bai teach you to roast this?" The plain-clothed beauty asked as she watched Du Xiaofu wolf down his food. The coldness in her voice seemed to have lessened a little, replaced by a trace of gentleness. Du Xiaofu raised his head and looked at the plain-clothed beauty. Since he couldn't escape or leave, his clear gaze became a little more casual as he said, "There's still one more. You can try it. You gave me a poison pill, but I didn't put poison on the meat. Speaking of which, this demonic mountain pangolin's meat is indeed not bad, just that the meat is a little overcooked." The plain-clothed beauty hesitated for a moment. To Du Xiaofu's surprise, with a wave of her slender hand, she really did grab the other roasted pig trotter out of thin air. However, she wrapped it in a clean handkerchief. Her red lips parted slightly as she gently tasted the meat. Her posture and temperament were much better than Du Xiaofu's ravenous eating. Du Xiaofu took a few more glances. He originally thought that experts didn't need to eat, but he didn't expect the beauty to have an appetite for roasted meat. Roar. In the depths of the mountain range, the roars of beasts could be heard from time to time, echoing throughout the forest. "I'll take you to see what's up ahead." The plain-clothed beautiful woman stood up and looked towards the depths of the mountain range. Before Du Xiaofu could react, his body involuntarily rose into the air and disappeared from the spot. Soon after Du Xiaofu and the plain-clothed beautiful woman left, a dozen figures rushed out from within the mountain forest. Among them were a couple of extraordinary-looking young men and young women. The surrounding people with powerful auras were all centered around these young men and young women. "Someone came here just now. Recently, the demonic beasts in the barbaric beast mountain range have gone on a rampage. Ordinary demonic beast hunters don't even dare to come close. It seems that a lot of people have specially come here recently. Those few forces should have arrived as well." The leader of the group, a white-haired old man, looked at the bonfire that was still emitting sparks, frowned, and said, "Let's continue on our way. We can't let others take advantage of us." Roar. Another late night, the roars of beasts became more and more intense. They came from the depths of the barbaric beast mountain range, shaking the entire mountain forest. The astonishing roars of beasts were like a flash flood, causing people to tremble in fear. Why are the demonic beasts becoming more and more abnormal recently? What exactly is going on inside? At the edge of the barbaric beast mountain range, many demonic beast hunters who were sitting cross-legged in the night were awakened by the roars. The astonishing roars of beasts were startling. For some of the demonic beast hunters who frequently traveled in the barbaric beast mountain range, they had never encountered such an abnormal situation. The situation was getting more and more intense. Rumble. Suddenly, the ground trembled, the mountain forest swayed, and the sea of trees rose and fell. Along with the smell of blood, there was also a demonic aura that soared into the sky. The demonic beasts are coming. There are powerful demonic beasts approaching. For some of the demonic beast hunters, they immediately felt that something was wrong. Each of them held their weapons and waited for the incoming attack. Oh! A ferocious demonic wolf rushed out. Its entire body was overflowing with light, and there seemed to be mysterious talismans flowing around its body. Its speed was as fast as lightning. Its ferocious mouth roared, revealing its sharp fangs. It waved its claws and instantly tore a burly man into pieces before he could react. It's a violent stone demonic wolf. A middle-aged man with decent strength was shocked. This adult violent stone demonic wolf was a demonic beast at the pulse movement realm. The huge blade in its hand had runes flashing on it. With just a glance, one could tell that the blade was not bad. The runes spread out, turning into a ray of light that immediately slashed towards the violent stone demonic wolf. Roar! The roar of the demonic beast shook the sky. Just as the middle-aged man slashed out with his blade, a white demonic tiger pounced out. Its body was the size of an elephant, and its demonic aura soared to the sky. Mysterious talismans flickered in its bloody mouth as it spat out, swallowing the middle-aged man along with his blade. It's a bloodthirsty demonic tiger. It's even stronger than the violent stone demonic wolf. Beast horde, it's the beast horde. In this instant, many voices cried out in alarm. Under the night sky, cries of alarm also rang out from the surrounding mountain range. There were even wails that resounded. Rumble. Within the mountain range, a large group of ferocious birds and ferocious beasts pounced out. It was a black patch, and it was an astonishing sight. In the air, countless birds flapped their wings, and there were even towering trees that were directly swept away and chopped off. The mountain forest shook, and huge rocks fell. The earth shook, and the mountains shook. Ferocious birds flapped their wings, and ferocious beasts ran. With such a commotion, the demonic hunters within the mountain range immediately fled. They did not dare to come in contact. Violent stone demonic wolves, bloodthirsty demonic tigers, and other demonic beasts at the same level were simply unable to resist. Many figures were directly buried under the torrential beast horde. The scene was extremely frightening. Swoosh swoosh. After the earth-shaking beast horde passed, a dozen figures rushed out from a rocky mountain cave. Their auras were incomparably powerful and there were a few extraordinary youths among them. However, there was not much fluctuation in their eyes. It was as though the frightening beast horde from before did not pose much of a threat to them. It was just that they did not want to waste their energy in the face of such a frightening beast horde. Among these people, the leader of the group was a bald man. He was extremely special. There were strange green stripes on his bald head. They looked like mysterious runes, and they added a little sharpness to his aura. I never imagined that there would be so many powerful demonic beasts in the barbaric beast mountain range. If I have time in the future, I can capture some and bring them back to the Munchu to tame them as mounts. Everywhere the beast horde passed, it was a complete mess. The bald man's gaze slightly moved. After which, he looked towards the place where the beast horde had passed and said, "Just as we have detected, a huge change has occurred in the barbaric beast mountain range. It's very likely that something happened when the Overlord was making a breakthrough. This is an excellent opportunity for us. Some of the other factions that have disappeared should have already arrived. We need to be quick." As his voice faded, the group of people disappeared into the mountain forest. In the night, the mountain forest shook, the earth shook, ferocious birds flapped their wings, and tens of thousands of demonic beasts roared. It was as if they were being chased away by something, or as if they were fleeing from something. It was a frightening sight. From the looks of it, something has really happened to the Overlord. Otherwise, it would not be like this. This is an opportunity bestowed by the heavens, an absolute opportunity bestowed by the heavens. On a cliff, a black-clothed old man was holding a strange snake-headed walking stick in his hand. He looked at the shaking beast horde in the distance and frowned slightly. It seemed that he was a little afraid. That Overlord existence was far too frightening. If it was not because of this unforeseen event, it was likely that no one would have dared to target it. Elder, the other factions should have arrived. It will be quite difficult for us to obtain this great opportunity. A skinny man said to the black-clothed old man. The black-clothed old man raised his head slightly. He looked towards the depths of the mountain range where the beast horde had passed and said, "No matter what, we must obtain this opportunity. If the other factions obtain it, the consequences will be worrying." Chapter 18. On the peak, Du Xiaofu's face was a little pale. When he was flying high up in the sky, he almost vomited out the pig trotter that he had eaten. More importantly, the earth-shaking beast horde, the ferocious birds flapping their wings and the cries of thousands of beasts caused Du Xiaofu's heart to palpitate as he watched from afar. If he encountered such a terrifying beast horde, it would not be enough even if he died 10,000 times. This made Du Xiaofu truly feel the terror of the savage beast mountain range. It's getting more and more interesting. I did not expect that there would be such a ferocious existence in the savage beast mountain range. It is able to drive away thousands of beasts and there are quite a few powerful demonic beasts. It seems that I have underestimated this savage beast mountain range. The plain-clothed beautiful woman looked at the depths of the beast horde and smiled. After which, she quietly sat down with her legs crossed. The ancient flute in her delicate hand once again landed beside her lips. She slightly opened her mouth and a heavenly flute sound was emitted. The flute sound was gentle and lingered in the air. It was a familiar melody. Although Du Xiaofu had already heard it once, he was still intoxicated by it. The night passed once again. When the sky began to brighten, Du Xiaofu woke up from the beautiful melody. The sound of the flute was like a magic spell, causing him to be unknowingly immersed in it. Even the sound of the flute made his soul feel as if it had been cleansed. After waking up, he felt refreshed and full of spirit. The plain-clothed beautiful woman still sat cross-legged at the side with her eyes slightly closed. What a terrifying beast horde! When Du Xiaofu looked at the place where the beast horde passed by last night, he understood. It was as if an earthquake had passed by. His face was once again filled with astonishment as he looked at the direction of the stone city. However, it was so far away that he did not know how far this place was from the stone city. "Why, are you frightened?" The plain-clothed beautiful woman had unknowingly opened her pair of autumn eyes. Her gaze landed on Du Xiaofu's body. It's indeed quite shocking. Du Xiaofu didn't deny it. It was impossible for him not to be afraid when he thought of the shocking beast tied yesterday. Your performance is already pretty good. However, you don't have to be afraid. Before Fu Yibai arrives, your life will be fine. The white-clothed beauty said to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu frowned. Putting aside whether Fu Yibai would come or not, if Fu Yibai really came in this dangerous savage beast mountain range, would he still be able to survive? He looked at the plain-clothed beauty and sighed helplessly. What if that old fellow Fu Yibai doesn't come or is unable to come? Then I'll kill you. The woman gazed at Du Xiaofu and said, let's stay here for a day or two. I'm afraid there'll be a great show to watch when the time comes. I'm hungry. Du Xiaofu was helpless. After coming to the center of the savage beast mountain range and experiencing the terrifying beast tide last night, even if this beautiful woman wanted him to leave, he wouldn't be able to. There should be many demonic beasts that were trampled to death in the beast tide at the foot of the mountain. You can go find something to eat. The plain-clothed beautiful woman didn't pay any more attention to Du Xiaofu. She wasn't afraid that Du Xiaofu would escape again. It's so high. Should I go down before coming back up? Looking down from the peak, Du Xiaofu sucked in a breath of cold air. From this towering peak to the foot of the mountain and then back up again, not to mention the rugged mountain path, even if it was a flat path, he would probably be exhausted to death. In any case, you're the one who's hungry, not me. The plain-clothed beautiful woman closed her eyes again after she spoke. Du Xiaofu gritted his teeth hatefully, but there was nothing he could do. In the end, he couldn't resist the rumbling of his stomach and helplessly began to climb down the peak. After an entire hour, Du Xiaofu climbed down from the peak to the foot of the mountain. When he was halfway up the mountain, he almost fell down. The skin on his hands was also scraped. If it wasn't for his Xian Qi, the consequences would be worrying. Ordinary people absolutely wouldn't be able to come down. At the foot of the mountain, the beast tide passed through a mess. Many towering trees were broken in the middle. Du Xiaofu could see many low-level Hotian-level demonic beasts' corpses. They should have been trampled to death by the powerful demonic beasts in the shocking beast tide. Du Xiaofu was somewhat helpless. Although the demonic beasts' corpses on the ground were all at the Hotian level, if they could be transported to the stone city, then they could be sold for a very high price. After looking around, Du Xiaofu didn't dare to go too far. He was afraid that he would encounter a demonic beast and be in big trouble. In the end, he could only find 2 smaller Hotian-level scarlet fire rabbits and a profound ice snake to bring up the mountain. The scarlet fire rabbit was half a meter long. It could spit out a kind of scarlet flame and was extremely agile. However, its attack power was relatively weak. It was a food that many demonic beasts hunters didn't like. It was not difficult to find it in the stone city. The profound ice snake was also a Hotian-level demonic beast. It was about 3 meters long and its entire body was cold. It was not poisonous, but if it bit, then the whole body would be frozen into ice. Du Xiaofu tore off a tree vine, found some natural seasoning box, and hung the 2 scarlet fire rabbits on his waist. He had no choice but to climb to the top of the mountain. When Du Xiaofu climbed to the top of the mountain, it was already noon. He was so tired that he only had one breath left. After lying on the ground for more than 10 minutes, he crawled up. The white-clothed woman was still sitting cross-legged. Her eyes were slightly closed. She didn't pay any attention to Du Xiaofu. After half an hour, Du Xiaofu roasted a scarlet fire rabbit until it was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. A fragrant aroma filled the air. The white-clothed woman opened her eyes. When Du Xiaofu was about to eat heartily, the white-clothed woman made her move. She stretched out her hand and grabbed the entire scarlet fire rabbit. Under Du Xiaofu's angry gaze, the white-clothed woman tore off a leg of the rabbit and threw the rest of the rabbit back to Du Xiaofu. After eating and wiping his mouth, Du Xiaofu had nothing else to do, so he started to perfect the stormy wave's palm. Last time, he had only succeeded in cultivating the stormy wave's palm, but he didn't have the time to perfect it. If the Xian Qi is concentrated in the Heavenly Gate and Heavenly Lake, then it won't be strong enough. The stormy wave's palm's imposing manner can be compared to the stormy wave's palm. It can also make up for the flaws and deficiencies caused by other places. Knowing that the white-clothed woman was an expert, Du Xiaofu didn't have any scruples in front of her. It didn't take long for him to immerse himself in the process of perfecting the stormy wave's palm. Not only is he able to practice Xiantian martial skills, but he is also able to perfect them. He has a useless martial vein, but it seems like it has recovered a little. I didn't expect such a special kid to exist in such a small city. Looking at Du Xiaofu, who was immersed in comprehending and perfecting the stormy wave's palm, the beautiful woman in plain clothes had some fluctuations in her eyes. Roar! Ao ao! At night, the mountain range was once again in an uproar. Another wave of demonic beasts came. This time, the demonic beasts were much more terrifying than the previous night. The average level of the demonic beasts was extremely powerful. The terrifying aura caused people to tremble. Du Xiaofu, who was in the process of perfecting the stormy wave's palm, was also awakened. Rumble! From the depths of the mountain range, a large number of demonic beasts came in a frenzy. Wherever they passed, the sea of trees collapsed. Fierce birds flapped their wings and broke the canopy. Broken branches and withered leaves fluttered everywhere. The roars of the demonic beasts were like thunder, resounding throughout the mountain range. Some of the lower-level demonic beasts were directly trampled into meat paste. Blood splattered everywhere. It was extremely bloody and terrifying. Retreat quickly, this demonic beast tide is very powerful. In the forest, a bald man with mysterious patterns on his head waved his powerful fists. Every punch was accompanied by runes. Every time he punched, a giant beast would be smashed into pieces. He led the people behind him to avoid the demonic beast tide. Retreat to the bottom of the cliff and avoid the demonic beast tide first. In a mountain forest not far away, a black-clothed old man holding a snake-headed walking stick shot out a series of talismans accompanied by mysterious runes. Like lightning, he could penetrate the head of a giant beast each time. Under the protection of many experts around, the young man and the young girl were escorted to the bottom of the cliff. Thank you to fish_tearless for tipping me 10,000 chasing waves coins, 13316365493 for tipping me 100 chasing waves coins, Plug for tipping me 100 chasing waves coins, Woankale 123 for tipping me 100 chasing waves coins, Feng Yu for tipping me 10,000 chasing waves coins. Thank you all. Chapter 19. The terrifying beast tide did not last for long. On the peak, Du Xiaofu looked at the ferocious birds circling and flapping their wings above his head. The strong wind caused his cheeks to hurt and his heart to beat faster. Those huge birds were like dark clouds pressing down on the sky. The towering trees were directly broken. It was too domineering and terrifying. It looks really extraordinary inside. Looking at the depths of the beast tide, the plain-clothed woman who had been sitting cross-legged muttered. After the beast tide, Du Xiaofu continued to roast a scarlet fire rabbit. When the fragrance spread, he took the initiative to tear off a rabbit leg and handed it to the plain-clothed woman. The plain-clothed woman didn't refuse. She wrapped it in a handkerchief and began to taste it. It was as if she wasn't eating, but tasting a kind of memory. Du Xiaofu, on the other hand, was different. He gobbled up the profound ice serpent in no time. Apparently, he was still hungry after finishing one, so he roasted the remaining one. I don't eat snake meat. It looks weird. When the snake meat's fragrance spread, Du Xiaofu wanted to hand it to the plain-clothed woman. However, this time, the woman turned her head and didn't even look at it. Du Xiaofu didn't care. He continued to wolf down the snake meat. After finishing it, he continued to comprehend and perfect the stormy wave palm. When he was comprehending and perfecting it, Du Xiaofu found that perfecting the stormy wave palm was much more difficult than perfecting the oscillating fist. He could clearly feel the flaws and loopholes in some places, but no matter how hard he tried, it was difficult to perfect it. This also caused Du Xiaofu to fall into a bottleneck. At this moment, the heavenly flute music slowly spread out. When the flute music entered the ear, it was intoxicating and cleansed the soul. Du Xiaofu suddenly understood the bottleneck he had just encountered. Under the heavenly flute music, it was as if he was suddenly enlightened. He comprehended the flute music like a fish in water. What a wonderful flute music! Did someone beat us to it? On a mountain peak in the distance, a white-haired old man looked at the mountain range in front of him and frowned. Elder He, could it be those forces? A middle-aged man asked. I don't know, but we have to go there as soon as possible. We can't let others beat us to it. There are already 2 waves of beasts. Something must have happened to that overlord. That's why he's clearing the area. He doesn't want anything to happen to him, said the white-haired old man. Above the peak, Du Xiaofu's hands formed a series of hand seals. Waves of profound qi flowed through the specific meridians and acupoints in his body. Finally, they gathered in his palm once again. At this moment, the aura on Du Xiaofu's body suddenly became terrifying. With his body as the center, terrifying waves of air constantly fluctuated. Above the peak, there was an endless amount of energy of the world pouring into Du Xiaofu's body. In the end, it caused the surrounding space to constantly fluctuate like boiling water. There even seemed to be light symbols surging within his body. A terrifying aura was like a suppressed volcano that was about to erupt. Channeling martial veins. Pulse level. Not far away, the plain-clothed beautiful woman's gaze had also landed on the faint glowing symbol and fluctuating qi wave on Du Xiaofu's body at this moment. The shock in her autumn eyes was much greater than the previous time. Stormy waves palm. Du Xiaofu shouted loudly. Immediately, he slapped out with his palm. Profound qi surged and a thunderous explosion suddenly rang out from the peak. Stormy waves of energy continuously collided with a boulder that was over 100 meters in front of him. Rumble. The boulder cracked and split into several large rocks that rolled down from the peak. Sonic booms continuously reverberated under the silent peak, echoing throughout the mountain forest. I've finally succeeded. Looking at the power caused by his palm, Du Xiaofu's face revealed a smile. He had finally perfected the stormy waves palm. Its power was as he had imagined, but it was much stronger. And during this process, Du Xiaofu still felt that he might be able to continue to strengthen the stormy waves palm. However, he had already reached his limit. If he wanted to perfect it, he already felt that he didn't have the strength to do so. Goo goo. Looking at the sky, it was already dusk of the next day. His stomach started to growl again. Du Xiaofu realized that he seemed to be able to eat a lot recently. What was even more strange was that he clearly hadn't continued to comprehend that mysterious move recently. However, for some unknown reason, the profound qi in his body became more and more abundant. He started to have a feeling that it was about to explode. I'll go down the mountain to find something to eat. After Du Xiaofu said to the white-clothed beautiful woman who was sitting cross-legged, he directly climbed down the peak. With the previous experience, this time, he was a lot faster. After reaching the foot of the mountain, not long after, he found a few smaller demonic beasts. He planned to carry them up the mountain to avoid encountering any living demonic beasts at the foot of the mountain. However, Du Xiaofu didn't encounter any demonic beasts. Instead, he encountered people. A dozen figures appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. There were old and young, male and female. The leader was a black-clothed old man, holding a strange snake-headed walking stick. The walking stick was curved, as if there was a python coiled around it. "Kid, who are you?" A middle-aged man looked at Du Xiaofu with a strange gaze. He couldn't feel any aura fluctuations from the youth in front of him, but there were profound chi fluctuations. "There are powerful demonic beasts here. You'd better leave early." Du Xiaofu raised his head and looked at these people. Each and every one of them had an extraordinary aura. They were even stronger than his uncles. They should not be ordinary people. Even the few young men and women looked more dazzling than his cousins in the Du family. "You still haven't told me who you are. Aren't you afraid of demonic beasts?" The middle-aged man was puzzled. He looked around. There was no one else other than this youth. 2 demonic beast tides had occurred, and a youth was still here. It was obviously a little abnormal. "Who I am is none of your business." Du Xiaofu was a little displeased. He had been feeling sullen in his heart recently. Moreover, these people were quite rude. Naturally, he wouldn't be too polite. If it was under normal circumstances, Du Xiaofu wouldn't be so rude when facing these extraordinary people. However, it was different now. Du Xiaofu knew that the plain-clothed woman was also an expert. Faintly, Du Xiaofu could even feel that the plain-clothed woman was even stronger than these people. Therefore, he naturally wasn't afraid. After all, the plain-clothed woman still wanted to eat his roasted meat and wait for him. That old bastard Fui Bai shouldn't ignore his life and death. Where did this wild kid come from? Do you know who we are? Be careful of provoking a calamity by being disrespectful to us. The middle-aged man's face was a little gloomy. He had an illustrious reputation in the outside world, and could be considered an existence that could shake a region. He never imagined that he would be disregarded and contradicted by this youth. The Sky Snake sect is quite awe-inspiring. Coming to the barbaric beast mountain range to scare people. Truly awe-inspiring. A hearty laughter rang out. Du Xiaofu looked towards the source of the laughter. Another dozen people came from the depths of the mountain forest. Their auras were incomparably vigorous. Among them, there were also a few extraordinary youths. The one who spoke was an extremely special bald man. There were strange green stripes on his bald head. They looked like mysterious patterns that added a bit of sharpness to his aura. "Brothers, the first update was supposed to be at 12. However, today is the Zhulang annual gathering. The saved chapters were sent at the wrong time and delayed the update. Therefore, I apologize for the delay.